Chapter 484. Stand down. Shiwanya bellowed angrily and waved the long saber in his hand on the ground. It was as though there was an earth dragon swimming toward Blind Man wherever it passed. The flagstones on the ground would shatter and a ravine would appear in the soil. The Blind Man tapped the ground with his bamboo cane, causing the ground to explode. Countless mud and gravel flew in all directions. However, the Blind Man turned the bamboo cane in his hand and blocked the mud and gravel. Then, he stabbed the cane diagonally at Shiwanya's chest. Shiwanya blocked with his saber in front of his chest. Clang! Shiwanya's entire body flew back 3 meters due to the impact. He landed on the ground and crushed the ground with his feet before stabilizing himself. He looked down at the saber in his hand and saw a dent about the thickness of a thumb on the blade. Bah, a godly spear? Shiwanya asked in a deep voice after spitting on the ground. Ha, the Protector General of the South is indeed skilled. The Blind Man laughed. Shiwanya grinned. It was indeed him. A spear is a godly spear, and a person is a vile person. These words were the best portrayal of him. Among the top 10 experts, there were 2 people who were the most disliked. One was Feng Sanlu, and the other was the godly spear, Ting Yu. Both of them had extremely bad characters, but they were very strong. One was ranked 5th in the world, and the other was ranked 4th. Ordinary people couldn't do anything to them. Feng Sanlu was killed by the Empress, and no one expected Ting Yu to appear here. What are you doing here? Shiwanya's face was cold and murderous. Ha, the Emperor of Great Xia sent someone to invite me to deal with Qi Zixiao. I originally wanted to fight with her and injure her a little so that she wouldn't be able to do anything for some time. However, I heard some interesting news. Qi Zixiao's injury hasn't healed yet, right? This made me change my mind. Although I'm blind, I've heard that Qi Zixiao is beautiful. Therefore, I want to ask her for her hand in marriage. Both of us are a perfect match, and we complement each other. With her strength, the only people who were worthy of her in this world were Miao Miao and a few others. The others aren't interested, but I'm very interested. Now, where is Qi Zixiao? Ask her if she's willing. The betrothal gift is all of your lives. This kind of words that hit the weak and feared the strong, and when he saw that you were injured, he would ruthlessly bite you, yet it sounded so righteous coming out of his mouth. There was no need for him to say the first sentence, and no one would know. However, he said it as if it was a matter of course, as if he was deliberately letting everyone know that he did not care about his status as the 4th most powerful expert in the world. Everyone's eyes widened in anger and they gritted their teeth. The person in front of him had a face full of wrinkles and a mouth full of yellow teeth. It was simply disgusting. A person like you is a disgrace to the 4th most powerful expert in the world. Shiwanya was so angry that his hair was about to stand up. What does being number 4 in the world have to do with who I am? Ting Yu laughed out loud. Shiwanya was at a loss for words. The 4th most powerful expert in the world was his strength, not his character. In terms of luck, he would at least be in the top 3. His Majesty was 1st, and he was 3rd. Winged cavalry, attack the enemy. Shiwanya roared. He was well aware of His Majesty's condition. No matter what, even if everyone died, he had to severely injure this person. When His Majesty recovers, this person will die. Get into formation in the courtyard. Gong Zheng, who was standing on the wall, shouted. Boom! Boom! The walls and buildings in the courtyard collapsed one by one. After the dust had settled, a total of 800 burly men in leather armor could be seen standing in the ruins of the courtyard. The long sabers in their hands shone brightly, and their murderous aura soared to the sky. The murderous aura of everyone gathered together dispersed the clouds in the sky, causing everyone in Wu City to inexplicably feel a chill in their hearts and be filled with fear. Shiwanya, Zhongshan, and Qing Ping formed a triangle and stood on the left, right, and back of Tingyu. Bloody battle. Kill. With a shout full of murderous aura, the 800 winged cavalry warriors clenched their teeth and pounced toward Tingyu. Even if the fourth most powerful expert in the world was in front of them, they wouldn't be able to take even half a step back. A hand stretched out from the ruins and pushed away the tiles and wood. Finally, a person with a head full of dirt and face emerged. Lin Qiaola looked around blankly. Where's the house? Where's the house? Where's the house? How did it get demolished when I was sleeping so soundly? Librarian Lin, this is a great enemy. Please help. Shi Wanya, who was fighting with Tingyu in the distance, saw the charging winged cavalry warriors fall one by one around Tingyu. His heart was bleeding non-stop, and his face was ashen. At this moment, he saw Lin Qiaola in the courtyard and immediately shouted. On a roof in the distance, Qing Yun's sword looked at the battle situation in front of him with an unpredictable expression. Finally, he clenched his teeth, made a sword gesture, and a long sword flew out from his back. Shi Wanya was a little surprised to see Qing Yun's sword make a move, but his spirits were lifted. Not far away from Qing Yun's sword, an old man in linen clothes had a look of disdain on his face when he saw Qing Yun's sword make a move. He looked ahead with a gloating expression. It's better to provide timely assistance than to add flowers to embroidery. Old Devilswa, since you have already surrendered, can you still play a double game? Does your Lingshan sect still have a way out? Qing Yun's sword turned his head and shouted. Upon hearing this, the old man in linen clothes had a gloomy and uncertain expression on his face. After a moment, he let out a long sigh and flipped his palm upward. A water and fire rod gradually materialized in his hand. In the future, Tianjing Basin would either be ruled by the Aboriginals or the three major powers. Just as Qing Yun's sword said, since the Lingshan sect had surrendered, there was no way out. If he made a move now, the future of the Lingshan sect would be better. Although he had no choice but to make a move, he held back 30% of his strength to harass the other party and protect himself. With the addition of these three spirit will experts, the pressure on Tingyu suddenly increased. Bang! The bamboo stick in Tingyu's hand exploded, and countless pieces of bamboo flew in all directions. As he twisted his body, a spear appeared in his hand. The spear was 7 feet long and covered with golden vein patterns. Little monk, do you want meat? Ren Baqian, who was busy in the kitchen, poked his head out and asked teasingly. We only have meat at home. Yes. Xing Ruo's eyes lit up when he heard about meat, and his saliva almost flowed out. You aren't pretentious at all. Ren Baqian couldn't help but laugh. He thought that Xing Ruo would refuse. I have to not starve to death to become a Buddha. Xing Ruo looked calm. That makes sense. Ren Baqian was amused by him. After being busy for a long time, he brought breakfast to the table and asked the two to eat. After taking 2 bites, Ren Baqian heard the doorbell ring again. Who is it this time? Ren Baqian was a little impatient. Usually, other than the housekeeper and Shenfeng, no one else would come. Last night, there was a little monk, and now, someone was ringing the doorbell again. Ren Baqian impatiently pushed the door open, and his impatient face immediately froze. Mom, Dad. Why are you here? He saw Ren Baqian's parents standing in front of the door. They were both dressed casually, dragging a suitcase, wearing sun hats and sunglasses, and looked like they were traveling. I would have forgotten that I had a son like you if you didn't come to see me. Ren Baqian's mother raised her eyebrows when she saw him. She reached out to pull his ear and scolded, Have you grown up? Have your wings hardened? Not only did you not bring your girlfriend back, but you are also not going home now. How long have you not been home? Why do we have to come and find you? Do you think you ran away from home? Ren Baqian looked sullen. One day ago, he was still in charge of the lives and deaths of countless people and was high-spirited. One day later, he had become a grandson, and he couldn't even resist. His mother kept poking him in the head with her finger. Rinpoche felt that there was a saying from the ancients that was simply a true portrayal of himself. Chapter 485. Why? Are you blocking the door and not letting us in? Rinpoche's mother poked him with her finger for a long time until a large patch of his scalp fell off. Only then did she open her eyes wide and speak. Rinpoche really didn't want to let them in. Neither he nor the Empress was prepared to meet their parents. However, did he dare to say no in this situation? My girlfriend is inside. Be careful with your words and don't be too friendly. Don't be too reserved. Rinpoche whispered. The Empress's identity was special and she had a cold temperament. He was afraid that his parents would say something they shouldn't and feel uncomfortable. You are already cohabiting, yet you didn't bring her back to take a look. I'm your mother, and I'm here to take a look at my future daughter-in-law. What's there to be reserved about? Rinpoche's mother whispered while glaring at him. It's not what you think. Rinpoche waved his hand. Sharing a bed and pillow was cohabitation, and living in the same house was also cohabitation. He even lived with the Empress in the palace, which was considered cohabitation. However, this was completely different. Rinpoche reached out and dragged his father's suitcase over before bringing the two of them inside. Were you robbed? Rinpoche's parents were surprised when they came in. This house was indeed imposing. Although Rinpoche's parents were surprised, they didn't say much after being surprised for a long time. Instead, the scene in the living room surprised them more. The living room was in a mess. Two small sofas had fallen apart, the coffee table was broken, and there was a big hole in the wall. Just a small matter. Rinpoche tried to fool them, put the suitcase aside, and asked, Have you had breakfast? I have eaten long ago. Take a seat first. Rinpoche quickly let them sit down. How did you gain so much weight? Rinpoche's father asked as he sat down. I'm strong. I'm strong. I'm strong. Rinpoche bulged his muscles. Was this considered fat? He was 175 meters tall and only weighed 100 kilograms. Was this considered fat? Where's my daughter-in-law? Rinpoche's mother looked around as soon as she sat down. I'll go and take a look. Rinpoche quickly ran to the dining room. The Empress was having breakfast with a pot of porridge and a pot of meat. He reckoned that his parents would be shocked if they saw the Empress's appetite. In any case, the little monk was scared out of his wits. From time to time, he raised his head and timidly looked at the Empress, afraid that she would eat him up. The Empress raised her head and glanced at Rinpoche. Then, she buried her head and continued to eat. My parents are here, Rinpoche whispered as he sat beside her. They don't know who you are, so please don't mind if they offend you. Oh. The Empress lowered her head and continued to eat the porridge. Seeing that the Empress's reaction was indifferent, Rinpoche felt a little relieved. However, he didn't dare to relax completely. Rinpoche didn't know if there was such a thing as meeting the parents in Dayo. However, looking at the Empress's reaction, it seemed like she hadn't. Even if there was, she wouldn't know. Do I have to see her? The Empress asked faintly after they had finished eating. According to her, it wasn't time for the wedding, so she would just return to her room. I think it's better for me to meet him. Rinpoche sighed. He had already been stopped by his parents, and it wouldn't be right if he didn't meet him now. Oh. You can continue eating. Rinpoche said to the little monk and walked out with the Empress. Breathtaking. This was the first feeling that Rinpoche's parents had when they saw the Empress. Both of them saw a lady in red walking out. They didn't have many adjectives to describe her, but they felt that this lady was prettier than those celebrities on television. She was tall, had fair skin, exquisite features, and fiery red lips. Her dashing eyebrows made her look even more heroic. In addition to that slightly cold and indifferent temperament, no matter where one saw such a person, they wouldn't be able to forget her at first glance. Furthermore, she had that kind of majesty. Although both of them hadn't seen any big shots before and didn't know what kind of aura was, they knew that she was definitely not an ordinary person. She gave off the feeling that she was someone who had walked out of a movie and existed in a fantasy. She didn't seem like a real person at all. "Hello, I'm Rinpoche's father, mother," both of them stood up at the same time and said. They finally understood why Rinpoche said not to restrain them. This daughter really made people subconsciously feel nervous when they saw her. They couldn't face her with the mentality of a normal parent meeting their daughter-in-law. Instead, it was as if they had met a big shot and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Although they had seen Rinpoche's selfies on their phones, seeing her in person was completely different. I'm so happy to meet both of you," Rinpoche added. The Empress was interrupted by Rinpoche's words. She turned her head to look at him, then turned to the two of them, nodded, and said, "I'm so happy to meet both of you. This is my father, my mother, and this is Qi Zixiao," Rinpoche introduced them. "Good name, very imposing," Rinpoche's father immediately praised. Sit, don't just stand there and talk," Rinpoche quickly called out. The Empress turned to look at him and asked with her eyes, "Where should we sit?" Except for the sofa in the middle of the living room, the rest of the furniture had been scrapped. "I'll go and get 2 chairs." Rinpoche called out and quickly ran to the dining room to get chairs. When he returned, he saw the 3 of them staring at each other. Sit. Rinpoche put down the 2 chairs and gestured to his parents. Only then did they finally sit down. "Thank you for taking care of Bochin." After sitting down, Mother Rin felt that she should speak, but didn't know what to say. Finally, she remembered that Rinpoche said that she was his superior. "He has also helped me a lot," the Empress said faintly. With Rinpoche, her life had changed from black and white to colorful, and her daily life had become more colorful. "What are you talking about taking care of me?" Rinpoche laughed it off. "Why are you here all of a sudden? You didn't even give me a call. We couldn't reach you by phone, and you only called us once every 2 weeks. Your father and I have nothing to do, so we thought of looking at your new house and paying you a visit," Mother Rin said. Facing Rinpoche, her tone immediately returned to normal. "I'm busy," Rinpoche replied. "I don't know what you are busy with all day. Is that precious medicine the one you started? It seems to be in the limelight now, and you're still working on a new leukemia drug?" Mother Rin asked. Before coming, she was afraid that Rinpoche would be cheated again because of her beauty, so she wanted to take a closer look. In the end, when she saw the Empress, she felt that she wasn't a match for an ordinary person. She quickly brought up Rinpoche's pharmaceutical factory to give him some confidence. This was the mentality of an ordinary person. Previously, they were afraid that the Empress wasn't worthy of their son, but now, they were afraid that their son would be despised by her. Although their son was the best in the eyes of their parents, they asked themselves honestly and felt that Rinpoche was just an ordinary person in terms of appearance and other aspects. Although he had made some achievements in the past 2 years, he only had some money. Compared to those with real power, he was still far from it. Rinpoche and the Empress accompanied them for a while. During this period, it was Rinpoche talking to them, and the Empress rarely opened her mouth. During this period, the little monk Xing Ruo came out of the dining room, which surprised them. They didn't know why there was a little monk here. "He was sent by his master to follow us to do some things," Rinpoche casually explained. Although they were doubtful about what such a little monk could do, they didn't ask anymore after thinking about Renbachian's identity as a civil servant. After a long time, Renbachian sent them upstairs. When they entered the room, they heaved a sigh of relief. "Io, is it so tiring to see your daughter-in-law?" Mama Ren closed the door and lay on the bed. "If I knew earlier, I wouldn't have come." "The daughter-in-law of an ordinary family is definitely different," Papa Ren said. "This lady isn't from an ordinary family. But this lady is really beautiful, just like a character in a movie," Mama Ren said as she sat up. Papa Ren agreed deeply and said, "She's just a little cold." In the past, I always heard people talking about the prestige of an official. Today, I finally experienced it for myself. She just stands there, and no one dares to speak carelessly. Outside, Renbachian and the Empress also heaved a sigh of relief. The Empress sat back on the sofa, hugged her knees, and said to Renbachian, who was rushing down the stairs, "I want to eat an ice cream." "Calm down." She felt very uncomfortable talking to Renbachian's parents. She couldn't expose her identity, speak in her usual way, restrain her temper, and couldn't chop the other party. The Empress felt that speaking to someone had never been so troublesome or tiring since she was young. Chapter 486. Renbachian's parents stayed in the villa for 3 days. At first, they weren't used to facing the Empress. After staying for 3 days, the two of them had become slightly more familiar with the Empress and could finally speak a few words with her. Renbachian brought them around Shanghai for 2 days and even made a trip to Disneyland. His parents didn't play much, but the Empress and the little monk Xing Ruo had a good time. They realized that the Empress would only have more expressions when facing their son. She looked a little more human. At other times, she was cold. However, this made them feel a little better. If she was this cold after marrying someone, they would really marry an ancestor. "You are a grown-up and know what to do. We won't meddle too much. But, when are you bringing her home? We have met before, but we haven't met our relatives yet. We have to get to know them," Mother Ren said. She was calculating in her heart. If she brought this fairy-like lady back, her relatives and friends would definitely be shocked. At that time, she would definitely set up 30 tables for everyone to see. There will be a chance. Renbachian half-heartedly sent them through the airport security and finally heaved a sigh of relief. From today onwards, he would be a king again. That day, he saw someone talking about a comic called Under One Man. He liked this name very much. He would take a look at this comic the next time he came back to see what kind of qualities were needed to be under one man. As a king, he had to work hard to enrich himself and improve himself. After sending the two of them off, Renbachian brought the Empress and Xing Ruo to the shopping mall. A burly man, a beautiful woman, and a little monk. No matter how one looked at this family of 3, it looked weird. Passers-by cast sidelong glances at them. Of course, even without the little monk, just the Empress alone would also attract the attention of everyone. After buying a bunch of things, the 3 returned to the villa. Renbachian packed the sweets, wine, hot pot base, and the Empress's clothes together and said to the little monk, "Hold on to me, I'm going to transform you into the magic monk, Xiao Yuan. Does it hurt?" "Also, I'm Xing Ruo, not Xiao Yuan," the little monk said timidly. There was a ripple in the air, and the 3 of them and the 2 big bags disappeared from the room. Renbachian was already used to this kind of transmigration. To him, it was as natural as drinking water and eating. It seemed like it should be like this. Sometimes, even he would forget that this was not an innate ability that he had, but something that had inexplicably appeared in his body. When he returned to the other world, he was immediately drenched by the torrential rain. The small monk looked at the pitch-black surroundings and the pouring rain. A second ago, he was still in the villa in Shanghai. His lips turned pale. Where is this? Ranbochin couldn't care less about the little monk. He was dumbfounded. When he left, he was clearly in the house, but where was the house? Where's the house? Where did the house go? The way I transmigrated was wrong. The Empress's facial expression was very ugly. It had only been a day and a night. When she left the house, it was still in ruins. How could she accept this? The Empress's aura surged, and a surge of energy rose from the ground. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that shook the entire Wu city. Immediately, silhouettes appeared in the ruins. Greetings, Your Majesty. Greetings, Your Majesty. We hope that Your Majesty will forgive us for being late. In an instant, a row of burly men knelt in front of the Empress. The small monk was so frightened that he took a few steps back and hid behind Ranbochin. The people who landed were all winged cavalry warriors. They were originally patrolling the surroundings of the ruins and immediately rushed over when they sensed the Empress's aura. What's going on? The Empress asked coldly. Greetings, Your Majesty. Shi Wanya's figure appeared beside everyone. After sensing the Empress's aura, he asked in surprise, Your Majesty, have you recovered? According to his estimation, the Empress's body would need at least 10 days to recover. He didn't expect that in just a day and a night, the Empress had actually recovered when she returned from an unknown place. The Empress frowned. At this moment, Shi Wanya was much weaker than when she left. It seemed like he had fought with someone. Furthermore, there were at least 7 or 8 newly bandaged wounds on his body. What exactly happened? Your Majesty, it's raining heavily now. Why don't you follow me to another place and explain in detail? Shi Wanya said. Lead the way. Everyone left the ruins under the heavy rain. Ranbochin and the Empress then realized that the area of the ruins wasn't small. It wasn't just the residence that they originally lived in. Even the surrounding residences were also full of broken bricks and tiles, broken walls, and broken beams. After a short while, everyone arrived at another residence along the street. Hundreds of winged cavalry warriors stood upright in the rain. Greetings, Your Majesty. Qing Yuan and Hong Wuan hurriedly ran to the Empress's side with umbrellas and opened them for her. However, it didn't make a difference whether they fought or not. I'm going back to change my clothes. Tell me later. The Empress had already calmed down and wasn't in a hurry. She went to the backyard with Qing Yuan and Hong Wuan. Ranbochin also asked Shi Wanya, found his own room, and changed into clean clothes. Where is this? The small monk had been in a daze ever since he came to this world. No matter how he looked at it, this wasn't Earth. There were also those tall and strong men with arms that could run horses. Every one of them made him want to hide far away. He had been spending his time in the monastery, practicing and reciting scriptures every day. He never had the concept of transmigrating to another world. This will be the world you live in from now on, Ranbochin said as he put on his clothes. Slowly get used to this place. Wait here, I'll go take a look. After speaking, Ranbochin left the small monk in the room and hurried out. He thought that the small monk should be able to calm down by the time he came back. When he came to the hall, Shi Wanya, Qing Ping, Zongshin, and Gongxing were also there. However, in addition to Shi Wanya, Qing Ping also had serious injuries. The bandages wrapped around his body were red, and one of his ears was missing. As for Zongshin, even though he didn't look like he was injured, he was coughing up blood. How did they become like this? Ranbochin was shocked. One had to know that these 3 were Cardinal Heaven experts, and each of them could take on 3 ordinary spirit will experts. All 3 of them were seriously injured. What exactly was going to happen? What kind of person could injure them like this? We'll talk about it when Her Majesty arrives, Shi Wanya answered. He didn't care that Ranbochin and the Empress were missing for a day. After all, a subject couldn't possibly watch over Her Majesty all the time. Furthermore, Her Majesty managed to avoid being shot by the spear during the day, and her injuries were completely healed by the time she returned. This was a good thing. After waiting for a full 15 minutes, the Empress slowly walked in with a frosty face and a murderous look in her eyes. It seemed like she had heard something from Qin Yuan and Hong Wuan. "Tell me in detail," the Empress said coldly after sitting down at the seat of honor. "Yes." Shi Wanya immediately recounted everything that had happened in full detail. In fact, it was very simple. Spear Tingyu suddenly appeared in Wu City, said some disgusting things, and fought with everyone. However, Shi Wanya explained such a simple matter for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. He told the Empress all the methods and characteristics that Tingyu had used. Finally, he said, "Now that Your Majesty has recovered, I can finally rest assured." "How many casualties were there?" the Empress asked. "We are guilty. We weren't a match for Spear Tingyu, and our injuries aren't light. However, if he comes again, we can still fight him." The winged cavalry suffered the most casualties, with 157 dead and 74 seriously injured. Among them, more than 30 can serve you after recuperating. Bang! Upon hearing this, the Empress immediately smashed the table beside her into pieces with a strong murderous look. Of the 200 people, even if only 30 could return to the team, there would still be 200 casualties. One had to know that the winged cavalry had a total of 1,500 men. After several battles, there were less than 1,000 of them left. After this battle, there were less than 800 of them left. It could be said that they had lost nearly half of their men. Even the Empress was heartbroken by such a loss. Renbaqian didn't show it on the surface, but he secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although the winged cavalry suffered heavy losses, fortunately, he and the Empress had returned to Earth to hide. It was fine as long as the Empress was fine. What followed was shock. The monk had sent 4 peaches at this time. Apart from 2 for himself, the other 2 were used to treat the Empress's injuries. Could he have predicted this? If he could really predict this, then it was simply terrifying. How could there be such a person on Earth? He wasn't a human anymore. He was simply a god. "Where's Tingyu? I want to kill him and suppress him in the palace forever." The Empress spat out each word with a cold murderous intent. Chapter 487. "Where's Tingyu?" the Empress asked. It seemed like she couldn't wait to kill him. "I don't know. He's quite fast, and we were all injured, so he escaped. However, I think he'll come again in a few days. After all, he thought that Your Majesty's injuries would take more than 10 days to heal. As long as he hasn't given up, he'll definitely come again." "Is Tingyu injured?" Renbaqian asked. "He's worthy of being the 4th most powerful expert in the world. Even though we besieged him and killed so many winged cavalry warriors, his injuries were much lighter than ours. If he had good medicine on him, he would have recovered more than 60 to 70% by the time he appeared again. However, he would definitely die against the fully recovered Empress," Shi Wanya exclaimed. This Tingyu really deserved to die for speaking disrespectfully to the Empress and killing so many winged cavalry warriors. Even though his character was bad, his strength was solid. "Humph." The Empress snorted. Even though she didn't want to admit it, from what everyone said, Tingyu was indeed a little stronger than her. The most important problem was that even though the Empress could achieve this level of combat power by burning her blood essence, she wasn't good at prolonged battles. If the battle with Tingyu dragged on for too long, the Empress would lose. She could kill Feng Sanlu in such a short period of time, but it was difficult to kill Tingyu. From this point of view, even though Tingyu was originally the 4th or 5th most powerful expert in the world, he was much better than Feng Sanlu. From the battle between the Empress at Mount Wu and Tingyu at Wu City, the Empress faced more than 10 spirit wool experts. Even though she was injured, she still managed to kill a few of them. Even though Ting Yu was able to escape unscathed, Shi Wanya and the rest were seriously injured. The main problem was that Ting Yu was better at prolonged battles than her. The Empress knew her weakness, so she sometimes risked getting injured to kill her opponent. Another point was that after each battle, the Empress would only have 30% of her combat power left and would need at least a month to recover. This was also her biggest weakness. Is he really blind? How does he fight? Is it his sense of smell or hearing? Ren Baqian still found it unbelievable that a blind man could be so powerful. However, if it was his sense of smell, it would be easy to deal with. A fortified smoke bomb would definitely make him wish he was dead. If it was his hearing, a sonic bomb would probably make him regret coming here. It's not the sense of smell and hearing. These two senses are easily affected instead of sight. If he had such a big weakness, he wouldn't be the fourth most powerful expert in the world. The Empress rejected Ren Baqian's idea. Your Majesty is right, Shi Wanya agreed. Maybe he's using his skin to feel the air around him. Either that, or their sense of smell and hearing are more outstanding, so that they can avoid their weaknesses as much as possible, Gongjing said. That's easy. As long as I create a blast of air in the surroundings, won't he become blind again? Ren Baqian immediately came up with an idea. In his mind, it would be very difficult to make such a huge fan. However, it was possible to make a bomb that would set off a shockwave after the explosion to disrupt him. There's no need for that. I want to see what kind of means he has. The Empress interrupted him. I'm guessing that he has a unique way of sensing his surroundings with his spirit. I'm afraid he can see more clearly than a normal person, the Empress explained. Only then did Ren Baqian temporarily suppress the idea of throwing a fortified smoke bomb, a sonic bomb, and an air bomb at the same time. All of you may leave. The Empress waved her hand, stood up, and left the room. Qin Yuan and Hong Wuan quickly followed behind her with umbrellas. After the Empress left, Ren Baqian asked, "How's Lin Chaola?" She suffered some minor injuries, but it's not a big deal. Shi Wanya added, however, the few people who surrendered to Principal Ren can still be of some use. Originally, I thought that it would be difficult to realize Principal Ren's plan and that it would be easier to just kill them. However, from the looks of it now, they have really surrendered. It's somewhat beyond my expectations. Ren Baqian laughed. He really didn't expect Qin Yun's sword and that Lingshan sect spirit will expert to actually lend a hand. In this way, it wouldn't be good for him to treat them too harshly. Ren Baqian first went to take a look at Lin Chaola. She was wearing a light undergarment and was sleeping soundly on her back in the room. She seemed to be fine, but her face was a little swollen as if she had been beaten with a stick. Ren Baqian stretched out his finger and poked her swollen face. She screamed, jumped up, and clawed at Ren Baqian twice. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Lin Chaola glared at Ren Baqian, whose face was all scratched. Ouch! Ren Baqian took a deep breath and cursed in his chest. He was the one who was in pain now. Rest well. Ren Baqian grabbed a small bag of white rabbit creamy candies and threw it to Lin Chaola as a reward. However, when he thought about how a bag of white rabbit creamy candies had resulted in a claw mark on his face, Ren Baqian felt that his good intentions had been f***ed by a dog. He got up and went out to touch his face. There was a trace of blood on his hand. He was disfigured. After a while, Ren Baqian met Qin Yun's sword and Zhuo Qing from the Lingshan sect in another room with a bloody face. Both of them were mainly focused on restraining the other party, so nothing serious happened. Only Zhuo Qing was slightly injured and Qin Yun's sword was slightly worn out. Please take a seat. Thank you for your hard work this time. Ren Baqian smiled and invited them to take a seat. Both of them remained silent. It couldn't be better for the two of you to make such a choice. I'm not a heartless person, so I can't disappoint the two of you. Renbochin picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. Previously, I said that I hope that the people of Tianjing Basin and the Aboriginals can be of use to your Majesty in the future. Both of you can recommend a few useful people to work under me first. When the time is right, I can find a suitable job for them, Renbochin said with a smile. Upon hearing Renbochin's words, both of their expressions changed. Even though these words were simple, recommending a few people to work under the person in front of them was much better than rewarding them with some benefits. What was the identity of the person in front of them? He was Qi Zixiao's husband. From the looks of it, he had a lot of authority and was highly valued by Qi Zixiao. By working under him, they would at least have a big backer in the Aboriginals' court. In the future, when Tianjing Basin was pacified, the other party would also look up to them. Furthermore, working under him was also the first step for the people of Tianjing Basin. Not to mention the fact that the Prime Minister was a rank 7 official. The benefits of working for him were much greater than those of some low-rank officials. Even if the people of Tianjing Basin left Tianjing Basin in the future, they would still have to bow down to the Aboriginals. However, with his support, it would be a completely different story. Renbochin's words weren't just a benefit to the two of them, but also an attitude and a message to them. Thank you, sir. Zhuo Qing cupped his hands and said. Qing Yun's sword recalled that day in that room. Someone said that the person in front of them wanted to stabilize his power and occupy a place in the imperial court. Therefore, he wanted them to surrender. Now, it seemed that this possibility was very high. If this was the case, they and the person in front of them would rise or fall together. If the other party fell in the future, they wouldn't be able to get any benefits. However, they had no other choice. Chapter 488. By the time Renbochin returned to his room, it was already very late. The little monk was leaning against the bed and dozing off. His eyes were a little red, and it seemed like he was crying. An 8 or 9-year-old child was suddenly brought to a strange world surrounded by burly men whose arms could run horses. It was normal for the little monk to be frightened. After all, the image of the Aboriginals often gave Renbochin the illusion that he was in a bandit's lair. Now, he was somewhat used to it. After entering the man-will level, his strength and weight began to skyrocket, and his muscles bulged. Although he was still very thin and weak compared to the Aboriginals, this was a problem of his small frame. His image was already starting to resemble that of a bandit. Occasionally, he would look in the mirror and reminisce about the handsome and fresh meat of the past. He had to search carefully to find a trace of his own face. Other than his biological parents, there weren't many people who could recognize him now. He didn't become bald, but he became heavier and stronger. This could be seen from the heavyweight and lightweight boxing rings. The more powerful he was, the more oppressive he was. Wake up. Go sleep in the room next door. Renbochin pushed the little monk awake. Where is this? This was the first thing the little monk said when he opened his eyes. Dayo, Tianjing Basin. You will live here from now on. Will I still be able to see my master? Unless you really become a Buddha, don't even think about seeing your master. Upon hearing this, the little monk burst into tears. This is an opportunity that your master found for you. Renbochin comforted him. After waiting for a long time, the little monk finally calmed down. Go to sleep first. We can talk about the rest later. Renbochin pushed the little monk into the room next door, laid on the bed, and entered the visualization of fire. Inside the room was a volcano. Looking down from the bottom of the mountain, the black mountain peak had streaks of red climbing up and winding down. These red lines were all rivers of lava. The closer it was to the top of the mountain, the denser the lava became, and the higher the temperature. At this moment, the metal chain was near a stream of lava at the foot of the mountain. It arched itself up and tried to dip one end into the lava. Its entire body shivered. Then, it laid comfortably beside the river of lava. From time to time, it would dip one end into the river of lava and then quickly pull it back, shivering all over. Renbochin felt that this guy seemed to be soaking his feet. At the very least, it looked quite realistic. After water and wood, it was now fire, completely following the order of the 5 elements. Presumably, the next one would be earth, and then metal. After completing the visualization of wood, his strength skyrocketed from 700 kilograms to 900 kilograms. His speed, musculoskeletal strength, and ability to take hits had also improved. After completing the visualization of water, Renbochin's kidneys functioned much better. The kidney was a place where essence was stored. It was divided into innate essence and acquired essence, including growth and development. He had gone from 120 kilograms to 200 kilograms, and it seemed like it was still growing. He did not know if it had anything to do with this. In addition, he was full of energy and didn't get tired easily. With regards to this, Renbochin was rather satisfied. Good kidneys were truly good. After completing the visualization of wood, his heart and lungs became stronger. The lungs were connected to the qi in the body. They were responsible for breathing, controlling the skin and hair, and opening the orifices to the nose. However, Renbochin discovered that his lung capacity had greatly increased. He took a deep breath, and like a whale swallowing water, he could hear the sound of the airflow. In the past, he would have drowned in the water in 2 minutes, but now it's 6 minutes. Climbing 30 floors in one go without panting. It seemed to be useless. Furthermore, the shortcomings were very obvious. For example, if he encountered gas poisoning or poisonous gas, he would have to lie down before others could react. In short, the benefits of completing the visualization of wood seemed to be smaller than the visualization of water. However, Renbochin felt that it shouldn't be so simple. With the completion of the visualization of wood, Renbochin finally felt the essence and blood in his body transform into wisps of gas that circulated throughout his body. The smoothness of this part might be related to the lungs. Renbochin had high expectations for the visualization of fire. After all, fire corresponded to the heart, and the heart was the source of power. At the same time, there was also the saying that the heart contained the spirit. Renbochin guessed that completing the visualization of fire would greatly improve his strength. At the same time, it would also nourish his spirit and lay the foundation for the earth will level. For the next 2 days, the entire Wu city was tense on the outside, and the atmosphere was even more oppressive. Renbochin and the Empress sat in the courtyard. The Empress rarely spoke. She had been resting with her eyes closed to adjust her condition. She was waiting for Tingyu to come and kill him here and now. She had to calm down every time there was a big battle. After all, he was the 4th most powerful expert in the world. Even if his strength wasn't at its peak, the Empress didn't dare to look down on him. Furthermore, sparring with such an expert was in itself a form of tempering for one's strength. During a battle with an expert, one's entire body's essence, qi, and spirit would fuse into one, and one's mind and spirit would become one. This would allow one to tap into one's potential during a life-and-death confrontation. As a result, after every battle, one's strength would improve to a certain extent. At the Empress's current level, every step forward was very difficult. Furthermore, her status made it very difficult for her to find a suitable opponent. Therefore, regardless of whether it was Feng Sanlu or the previous battle with the numerous spirit will experts from Tianjing Basin, even though there was a reason for it, she was still extremely happy. This battle with Tingyu was extremely important to her. Renbochin stayed by the Empress's side and didn't speak. He only fixed his gaze on the Empress's face and stared fixedly at this heroic face. In particular, those red lips of hers always made him want to kiss them. Renbaqian's gaze made the Empress's face itch a little. After a long time, she opened her eyes and stared at him. Have you seen enough? I haven't seen enough in my entire life. I always wonder how can there be such a perfect person in this world. It's simply a creation from heaven and earth. Renbaqian smiled. The Empress wrinkled her nose and wanted to laugh. However, she immediately put on a straight face and said, I want to rest. Go and do what you need to do. Renbaqian was chased out of the courtyard by the Empress. He looked up at the sky and was thinking about how to take revenge on that old fart, Xiao Baichong. This guy really didn't stop. Previously, the Zhu Mu elders, Lu Qi, and now Ting Yu were all stronger than the other. Renbaqian didn't know how much he had to spend to hire these people. There was also Su Qing. Although he was a traitor, he was also sent by Xiao Baichong to cause trouble for Dao. He was also the one who sent people to persuade the Yun nation and the Qin nation. At the end of the day, he was originally living well in Lon City, but now he was running around every day. The main culprit for all of this was this old radish. He couldn't possibly be fighting for his life here every day while he led a drunken life in the palace of Great Xia, right? A good neighbor was someone who reciprocated. Why not throw 1,000 skunk bombs at the palace? This time, there was no need for smoke. He could directly throw 1,000 concentrated skunk bombs at the palace of Great Xia. It was guaranteed that the fragrance of the palace would hit the people and linger for 3 months. Renbaqian had personally experienced the power of concentrated skunk bombs. Its absolute lethality was astonishing and wasn't inferior to any large-scale biological weapons. He didn't believe that he wouldn't vomit blood. As long as he announced that he would take responsibility for this matter in the name of Dao, Xiao Baichong wouldn't be able to tolerate this. He wouldn't even be able to avoid sending troops. Otherwise, where would the dignity of the royal family of Great Xia be? As long as he sent troops again, Su Qing's opportunity would come. When that time came, when Great Xia was in chaos, Renbaqian would think of ways to stifle Xiao Baichong and stab him in the heart. However, no matter how he looked at it, Su Qing would be taking advantage of this situation. Renbaqian had to scrape some benefits from him. Chapter 489. As time passed, the atmosphere in the city became more and more oppressive. Everyone knew that Ting Yu would come again. If it were any other expert, they would wait for the Empress to recover before fighting her. However, Ting Yu wouldn't do so. Therefore, there was only one possibility. Ting Yu was recuperating. The later he came, the better his recovery would be. On the morning of the 8th day, there were people selling breakfast on the streets. Although it wasn't as lively as before, it was still somewhat lively. As time passed, the residents of Wu City realized that the aboriginals didn't harass the civilians, which made them feel more at ease. Unknowingly, a man appeared in the city. The sound of his bamboo cane tapping on the stone slabs echoed far and wide. Spirit Spear Ting Yu. Not long after he appeared in the city, he was discovered by the winged cavalry. As soon as the news spread, countless people landed on their roofs and stared coldly at the only person walking on the streets. As for the rest, they had long since hidden in their houses. Many people heard someone walking on their roofs and occasionally saw a huge foot trampling on the roofs. They hid in their houses feeling nervous and didn't know what was going on. Your Majesty, Ting Yu has appeared, a guard hurriedly reported from the garden. I got it, the Empress said with her eyes closed. I will report to him when he is almost here. When Renbaqian heard that the other party was coming, his tensed heart, which had been tense for the past 2 days, felt relieved. Many things were like this. There were all sorts of guesses before it happened, but when it really happened, it was useless to think too much. Now, it all depended on the battle between the Empress and the other party. After a while, someone came to report, "Your Majesty, Ting Yu is 400 steps away from the door." Only then did the Empress open her eyes. The snow-white glow in her eyes was somewhat dazzling to Renbochin. The Empress stood up and walked out. Renbochin whispered to the guard, "Get someone to bring out the box from my room." Inside were the concentrated skunk bombs and sonic bombs that he had just brought back from Earth. Although these things attacked indiscriminately, the Empress had experienced it once and was definitely more resistant to odor than the other party. Furthermore, Renbochin guessed that since the other party was blind, his sense of smell and hearing should be stronger than ordinary people. Therefore, he would be more or less affected. In a fight between experts, this was what they fought for. If the situation was not good, he could throw these two things out. Perhaps it would be effective. There's no need for that. The Empress's voice came from the front. Since he came alone, why would I do such a despicable thing? The Empress replied without turning her head. Upon hearing what Renbochin said, she knew what he was up to. But he's quite despicable. When dealing with people like him, you don't have to be too open and aboveboard, Renbochin whispered. Do you think I'm the same as him? The Empress asked. Her Majesty is accomplished in both literature and martial arts, and has benefited the common people for thousands of years to come. Renbochin immediately changed his tone. Then watch from behind. When everyone left the mansion, they saw an old man dressed in black walking over from the other end of the street with a bamboo cane in his hand. The sound of the bamboo cane hitting the stone floor reached everyone's ears. Renbochin sized him up carefully. Was this the spirit spear Ting Yu? He looked to be in his 50s or 60s, with a goatee and a face full of wrinkles. His ordinary facial features looked disgusting when they were squeezed onto his face. Qi Zhixiao, I paid a visit last time, but I didn't expect to leave empty-handed. Now, I finally see you in person. Very good, Ting Yu said loudly as he stopped 50 meters in front of everyone. With your strength, there are only a handful of people in this world who can defeat you, and there aren't many who are worthy of you. You and I are a perfect match. Why don't you marry me? Even though I don't have anything valuable on me, I can still take out a mere betrothal gift. Ting Yu's old face was smiling like a dead chrysanthemum, and he even revealed a mouthful of rotten teeth. No matter how Renbochin looked at him, he felt a surge of anger rising from the bottom of his heart, and he wanted to suppress this old bastard in a cesspit. You said the same thing twice. Don't you have anything else to say? You left the last time, and this time, you specially came to deliver your head. I'll keep it, the Empress said faintly. So your injuries have recovered. No wonder you are so confident. However, there are at least 8,000 to 10,000 people who want my head. Qi Zhixiao, if you want my head, I'm afraid you will have to queue for another 100 years. Ting Yu carefully sensed and then laughed. Did Xiao Baichong send you alone? Renbochin interrupted. He wanted to know if Ting Yu was the only one, or if there were other people who had entered Tianjing Basin. Xia Baichong. But you are wrong. I wasn't sent by him. His things in exchange for a favor from me. It's just a transaction. You are Qi Zhixiao's lover. You are just a little worm. Commit suicide. Ting Yu chuckled. The last 3 words were like a demonic sound that poured into Renbochin's ears. He used a special method to say these 3 words. It could only be used to deal with people who were much weaker than him, but it could affect the mood of others with his voice and make them feel that what he said was right. However, when these 3 words entered Renbochin's mind, he immediately felt that what Ting Yu said was right. There was indeed no meaning in living, and it was better to die. His eyes turned gray. At this moment, the metal chain that was soaking his feet in his sea of knowledge suddenly sprang up. The metal chain, which was only a few meters long, suddenly extended into the sky. It went beyond the volcano and even the sky. In Renbachian's sea of knowledge, it looked as if it was standing between heaven and earth and connected to the fields. In just a moment, the metal chain retracted and turned into a spherical cage at one end. Inside the cage, there was a worm-like thing that was moving left and right. The metal chain shook the spherical cage from side to side as if it had found something fun and was reluctant to let go. Renbachian became absent-minded for a moment before coming back to his senses. He immediately realized that he was almost hit by this move just now. The others weren't affected, and it was obviously targeted at him. He immediately opened his mouth and scolded, "It takes a lot of courage to live in this world with your appearance. You are wasting food and polluting the environment while you are alive. If you die, you will be making a small contribution to the beautiful lives of the people of the world. Why don't you commit suicide? Even if it's not for the sake of others, it's on account of the fact that your mother used to live and exist in this world. You have polluted the world that she once lived in. You are simply unworthy of being a son. Remember to drown yourself in the toilet so that your corpse doesn't contaminate the soil elsewhere." Ting Yu was stunned. Renbachian wasn't affected by him at all and even scolded him. And he even scolded him in such a nasty way. Where did all these curses come from? Following that, Ting Yu smiled sinisterly and said, "Sharp-tongued brat, I'll tear your mouth in a while. Let's see if you can still curse then. You won't have that chance. I will crush your head in front of the palace square," the Empress said coldly. "Build a public toilet on top of it and soak your head in it. You can go in and take a dump on the head of the world's fourth strongest expert for just 1 copper coin. I'm sure many people would be interested. You can also pay 20 copper coins a month and 2 taels of silver a year. You will also be given a VIP seat in the public toilets, priority access, no queues, and free toilet paper," Renbachian added. "I'm quite interested, ah." Shi Wanya burst out laughing. "I'm also interested." Zhong Shen and Qing Ping laughed loudly. Courting death. Ting Yu's face darkened completely. The bamboo cane in his hand shattered, and a spear appeared in his hand. He pointed it at the crowd. No matter how bad his character was, he was still the 4th in the world. Who would dare to insult him like this? Moreover, Renbachian's scolding was so nasty that even he couldn't stand it. When it came to scolding people, he was really no match for that kid. He didn't gain any advantage verbally, but he almost went crazy with anger. Soak his head in the toilet. Charge fees. That was simply courting death. Even though his character wasn't worth mentioning, he was still one of the top experts in the world. His spear technique was extremely terrifying. His spear moved the wind and clouds, and the air in Wu City seemed to be stirred up by it. Everyone felt the surrounding airflow start to spin, and a gale started to blow. Even though Ting Yu was still standing in his original spot, his spear tore through the air, and the silver tip of the spear occupied everyone's field of vision. Even an Iron Man would be torn to pieces by this spear. This was the terror of the 4th most powerful expert in the world. The Empress moved and struck with her palm. Boom! A wave of air forced everyone to retreat. If Shi Wanya wasn't waiting, Renbachian would have been able to kite the Empress. The walls around them collapsed, followed by the houses in the courtyard. The stone slabs on the ground between them turned into powder. There was even a 3-meter wide and 5-meter deep gully on the ground. This was the mark of this spear attack. Boom! The buildings on both sides collapsed with a loud rumble. Crash! Amidst the broken tiles, a head with a face full of dust and dirt popped out. Chapter 490. Boom! 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 As the two of them fought, the buildings on the street collapsed one by one. A black and a red figure shuttled back and forth amidst the rising dust. Ting Yu flicked his spear on the ground, sending pieces of stone slabs flying toward the Empress. However, they were turned into dust by her jade-like palms. Purple thunder. Ting Yu shouted as the spear in his hand turned into a Z-shaped bolt of lightning and struck at the Empress. The Empress continued to resist with her bare palms. Shockwaves rippled in the air and swept in all directions, causing another building to collapse. Ren Baqian was dazzled by the battle. The purple pattern on the Empress's face was so beautiful that it made his heart palpitate incessantly. He wanted to sing a song, but he lacked an arrow. How much of Ting Yu's strength has recovered? Ren Baqian asked Shiwanya. With his eyesight, he could only watch the show and couldn't see much. Most of the time, he couldn't even see the figures clearly. Occasionally, he would see the Empress's red clothes fluttering in the wind. Her skin was covered with purple patterns, which made her look mysterious and beautiful. I can't tell, but it's at least 80%. Maybe even 90%. Shiwanya said in a deep voice. What are the chances of winning, Your Majesty? Swallow the mountain. Ting Yu shouted again as the spear in his hand turned into a giant golden python. It bared its snow-white teeth and opened its mouth to swallow the Empress. The Empress didn't seem to know how to dodge. From the start of the battle until now, she hadn't retreated or dodged at all. Ren Baqian recalled watching the Empress fight with the spirit wool experts from Tianjing Basin. She didn't seem to dodge at all and mostly fought hard with her bare palms. At this moment, the Empress twisted her slender waist in the air, turned half a circle, and waved her fingers up and down as if she was tearing something apart. Before the golden python in the air could even touch the Empress, it was immediately torn apart from its mouth and turned into golden specks of light. A spear flew back into Ting Yu's hand. Prison suppression. Ting Yu caught the spear with one hand, spun it half a circle in the air, and bent the body of the spear into the shape of a bow. Before the spear even landed, the air below the spear was pushed to the sides, and a gully even appeared on the ground. In Ren Baqian's eyes, he didn't see a spear strike. Instead, he saw a black mountain sitting on the tip of the spear and pressing down on the Empress. Boom! Both parties collided again, and the Empress was smashed down from the sky, creating a huge crater on the ground. The black mountain in the sky disappeared. Ting Yu's spear bounced up high, drew a big circle behind him, and shot straight down at the Empress. Ren Baqian's heart tightened. However, at this moment, the Empress was in the pit and couldn't see anything. Ting Yu went down quickly, but he came up even faster. As he somersaulted, he flew upward and completed a 3,600-degree free turn in the air before he regained his balance. Blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. A red figure soared into the sky and collided with Ting Yu again. Ren Baqian's palms were sweating as he watched from below. In theory, the Empress shouldn't be weaker than Ting Yu. After all, Ting Yu was still injured and hadn't fully recovered. However, this was only in theory. No one knew if Ting Yu had any trump cards. Moreover, in a battle between experts, victory or defeat was determined by a fine line. Being weaker didn't mean that one wouldn't lose. Fortunately, both of them were equal in strength. Even if there was a fine line between victory and defeat, their lives wouldn't be in danger. Ren Baqian still had Shiwanya and the others on his side. Even though they were all seriously injured, it shouldn't be a problem to restrain Ting Yu. Even if the Empress lost, her life wouldn't be in danger. Stop pulling. Ren Baqian slapped the hand that was tugging at his clothes. It was a tender and smooth little hand. Ren Baqian turned his head and saw Lin Chaola sitting behind him. Her face was covered in dirt, and she was drooling as she stared at the bag of sweets hanging on his waist. He grabbed a handful of sweets for Lin Chaola. Ren Baqian turned his head and saw a red figure being smashed down. Boom! Heaven's net! Ting Yu shouted. It was as if countless meteors appeared in the sky and smashed toward the Empress. In fact, they were countless spear shadows that emitted a golden glow. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of metal colliding could be heard coming from the huge pit. Earth net. Ting Yu's voice was heard. A golden ray of light that was far more dazzling than the other spear shadows pierced straight into the earth. Renbochin immediately felt a violent tremor coming from under his feet. Not good. Shi Wanya's expression changed. Without thinking, he grabbed Renbochin's clothes and jumped out. Qin Yuan and Hong Yuan were also brought away by Zongshen and Qing Ping. Just as everyone left the ground was covered with countless cracks. Following which, spear energy shot up into the sky. This area was filled with streaks of spear energy. Bang! Ting Yu collided with the Empress again, but this time, he was charging toward everyone like lightning. Where do you think you're going? Shi Wanya shouted. The long saber on his back appeared in his hand, and a snow-white saber light swept up like a waterfall from the bottom to the top. When he made his move, he threw Renbochin toward Qing Ping. However, at this moment, Ting Yu's spear tapped on the saber light. His body made a turn and swept past Ting Yu. Not good. Qing Ping shouted angrily, but it was already too late. Renbochin was originally thrown into the air. Fortunately, he was used to being thrown and didn't panic. Just as he expected, a big hand grabbed his collar and caught him. However, why was he getting further and further away from everyone? Ting Yu. You are one of the top experts in the world. How could you do such a thing? Why aren't you putting Principal Ren down? Qing Ping grabbed Hong Yuan and landed on a pile of rubble while shouting at Ting Yu. Renbochin. F***ck, I was caught by this old bastard Ting Yu. The person behind me is Ting Yu. Renbochin's forehead was immediately drenched in sweat, and his heart felt as if it was being squeezed tightly by a big hand. Let him go. The Empress bounced up again as soon as she landed and chased after them. Qi Zixiao, you better stop. Otherwise, I will strangle him now. Ting Yu's gloomy voice sounded behind Renbochin. I'm finished. Renbochin felt like cursing 10,000 times. Following Ting Yu's words, Renbochin finally landed on the ground, but he felt that his legs were a little weak. Ting Yu, what are you trying to do? The Empress asked coldly as she landed about 50 meters away from them. The Empress's current condition wasn't too good. Many parts of her body were broken, revealing blood-red wounds. You actually stopped. It seems like you value this fellow quite a lot. Ting Yu laughed mischievously. It's just that I feel that if we fight to the death, I won't be able to leave with so many of you here. If you hurt him, even if I have to go to the ends of the earth, I will still kill you and dismember you into 1,000 pieces. Renbochin, Your Majesty, aren't you telling the other party that I'm a good handle? Should I ask Your Majesty to leave me alone and take revenge for me, or should I ask Your Majesty not to be impulsive? Hee hee. Ting Yu laughed mischievously behind Renbochin. Even without turning his head, Renbochin could hear the meaning behind these words. Soon after, he felt himself being thrown backward. Following which, he felt a sharp pain in his body as a spear nailed him to the wall. After being nailed to the wall by a spear, Renbochin felt his vision turn black and almost fainted from the pain. Even though the spear didn't pierce his vital points, it did pierce through the area below his shoulder blade. The waves of pain stimulated his brain. Ting Yu stood 2 meters in front of Renbochin and said calmly, Qi Zixiao, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do now? I will definitely kill you. The Empress's voice was filled with murderous intent. Since you are going to kill me anyway, it doesn't matter if this fellow lives or dies. Coincidentally, I hate that mouth of his, so I might as well tear it apart. Ting Yu laughed heartily. How dare you? The Empress glared at him and subconsciously took a step forward. Don't move. Tingyu slapped the shaft of the spear with the back of his hand. The spear was immediately nailed in a few centimeters, and the pain made Renbochin's vision turn black. Tingyu, you are simply courting death. Shiwanya, Qingping, and the others caught up and glared at Tingyu. Why don't you slap yourself with your palm and lower your strength by 30%, then we can fight again. With so many of you around, I can feel at ease. Tingyu looked at the Empress and laughed. The Empress stared at him in silence. Your Majesty, you mustn't. Shiwanya hurriedly shouted. All right. The Empress raised her palm. Your Majesty. Everyone cried out. The Empress stared intently at Tingyu, as well as Renbochin, who was behind him. Attract his attention. Renbochin mouthed. Even though he was in so much pain that his vision turned black, he didn't make any sound. Your Majesty. Everyone was still shouting. Noisy. The Empress slapped her palm to the side, and a gust of air immediately sent Shiwanya flying. Good. Good. Not bad, you're indeed loyal and sentimental. Tingyu laughed loudly when he saw this. Just as Tingyu was laughing, he suddenly felt that something was amiss behind him. He swatted his palm behind him, but unexpectedly, he missed. He slammed into the wall behind him, smashing it into pieces. But he was gone, and so was his gun. Shiwanya, Qingping, Zongshin, Lin Chaola, Qingyun's sword and Zhuqing. Except for Tingyu, everyone clearly saw Renbochin disappear from the wall with Tingyu's gun. Chapter 491. When Renbochin returned to Earth, his legs went soft, and he fell to his knees. When the spear hit the ground, he almost fainted from the pain, but he didn't dare to pull it out. If he pulled it out from such a wound, he would definitely lose a lot of blood. Furthermore, he lived far away from the city, and he didn't want to test the hemostasis ability of his visualization of wood. If he made a mistake, he would be cremated by the time the ambulance arrived. After panting for a long time, Renbochin supported his body and staggered to the second floor to make a call. Shenfeng, call the ambulance to my house. If it's any later, you will lose your job. Renbochin's voice was a little weak, but it was still stable. The most dangerous moment was before he came back. After all, it took about 1 second for him to transmigrate. When the Empress discovered that he had transmigrated, she rushed over from a few meters away to catch him. He was really afraid that if Tingyu found out and brought him back, he would really die a tragic death. Fortunately, Tingyu was distracted by the Empress at that time, and it was already too late by the time he realized it. For a moment just now, he really felt that he was going to die. After all, the fourth most powerful expert in the world was so despicable that even the Empress couldn't save him if he fell into his hands. Fortunately, he was careless and used the spear to pin him to the wall to provoke the Empress. This gave him a chance. Otherwise, the grass on his grave would be 5 feet tall by this time next year. Renbochin leaned against the bed and pressed the tip of the spear against it. This way, the force of the spear's fall was reduced, and the pain from the wound was lessened. Even though it was better than nothing, it more or less made him feel better. After feeling slightly better, Renbochin started to laugh. He wasn't dead, but that bastard Tingyu was going to die. The fourth most powerful expert in the world. Renbochin wondered what kind of expression he would have when he realized that his heaven-grade weapon, which he had painstakingly built his entire life, had disappeared. It would definitely be a sight to behold. He really wanted to see it with his own eyes. However, he probably wouldn't have the chance to do so. If a group of people couldn't stop Tingyu without his spear, then he wouldn't be the fourth most powerful expert in the world, but the #1 expert in the world. As he let his imagination run wild, he watched as blood flowed along the golden veins on the spear and gradually formed a pool of blood. He still didn't hear the sound of the ambulance. Renbochin began to feel anxious. He called Shenfeng again to confirm that she wasn't far away and felt a little more at ease. The golden patterns on the spear looked as if they were carved into the spear. One could feel the uneven surface of the spear with their hands, which served as a blood groove. Although each of the lines was very shallow, there were many of them. The following period of time was simply torturous. Renbochin felt his strength begin to drain away, his body became weaker and weaker, and his head began to feel dizzy. The iron chain emerged from the top of his head. After twisting a few times, it wrapped itself around the body of the spear as if it wanted to pull the spear out. The metal chain in Renbochin's body also sensed danger. If Renbochin died, it would lose its place of existence and vanish in a puff of smoke. The movement of the metal chain pulling the spear jolted Renbochin out of his daze, and he hurriedly stopped it. Fortunately, he heard the sound of an ambulance coming from afar and stopping in front of the courtyard. Then, they stopped outside the villa and knocked on the door a few times. Renbochin could hear the sounds coming from downstairs, but he didn't have the strength to get up and go to the window to call for them. Fortunately, a moment later, someone opened the door with a key. It was probably Shenfeng who had arrived at the same time as the ambulance. Following the trail of blood, the group hurried to the second floor and found Renbochin, who had been pierced by a spear with golden lines. Everyone was astonished. Firstly, they were astonished by the spear. Secondly, they were astonished by the clothes that Renbochin was wearing. After all, he was still wearing Dayo's official uniform. "Boss, how are you feeling?" Shenfeng didn't hide the astonishment on her face as she hurriedly ran over and asked. "I'm still alive. It's hard to say if we don't save him now," Renbochin replied weakly. The group of people didn't dare to touch the spear on Renbochin's body and hurriedly carried him sideways to the ambulance. However, the spear was nearly 2 meters long, and it was inevitable that it would bump into something. This caused Renbochin to grimace in pain. His hatred for Tingyu couldn't even be washed away by the torrential river. After getting into the ambulance, Renbochin finally relaxed. Just now, when he came out, he saw some people standing in the distance. They were presumably from the Messier 87 department. It was impossible for them to not know about such a big matter. Since they knew, they wouldn't let him die so easily. Compared to the hospital, Renbochin had more faith in the strength of the Messier 87 department. As the vehicle started moving, Renbochin's vision turned black, and he gradually fell asleep. That spear is gone. Renbochin had just fainted when chaos broke out in the ambulance. That was because the ancient spear with golden veins had suddenly disappeared. The person who had been pressing down on Renbochin's blood vessels to help him stop the bleeding was in a flurry. Finally, he managed to stop the bleeding. When the ambulance arrived at the hospital, many people rushed into the emergency room to treat Renbochin. In fact, his problem wasn't difficult to deal with, and it was easier to stop the bleeding. After all, his ability to stop bleeding was much stronger than ordinary people. However, Renbochin's problem was that he couldn't get a blood transfusion. His blood type was very ordinary, but his body was extremely resistant to other people's blood. It seems that when one's strength reaches a certain level, the body will change from the inside out, including the blood. A few doctors who had never appeared in this hospital before looked at each other, and someone beside them immediately recorded it down. When Renbochin woke up, it was already 2 days later. He was awakened by hunger in his stomach, and it was as if his internal organs were rebelling. As mentioned before, his injuries weren't considered serious, and Tingyu didn't pierce his vital organs. However, he had lost a lot of blood, and he couldn't receive a blood transfusion, so he was relatively weak. "Boss, I have good news and bad news." Which one do you want to hear first? Shenfeng was sitting by the bed and playing with her phone. Let's hear the bad news first, Ren Baqin said weakly. He wondered if there was something wrong with his body. You have kidney stones and liver stones. Do you want them removed? Shenfeng asked. Ren Baqin's face turned green when he heard this. He had cultivated the visualization of water and visualization of wood, and they corresponded to the kidney and liver. He wouldn't believe that there was nothing wrong with them. He gritted his teeth and said, I will smash the head of anyone who dares to remove my stones. Boss, are you really not going to reconsider? Kidney stones can cause urination difficulties and kidney dysfunction. Shenfeng asked. Ren Baqin looked at her with a murderous gaze, which made her shiver, and she quickly swallowed her words. What's the good news? Ren Baqin asked again. Boss, you are fine. You just need to rest for a period of time. This is good news, right? Shenfeng said with a smile. With such a smile on that neutral and cold face, he looked a little more like a woman. Ren Baqin heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this and said to Shenfeng, hurry up and get me something to eat. Enough for 10 people. 20 minutes later, Ren Baqin asked while drinking porridge, where's the gun? It disappeared. It disappeared not long after you were carried to the ambulance. Shenfeng was surprised when she mentioned this matter. Boss, what's that? You will know when you have the chance in the future. Ren Baqin waved his hand. However, he would have to wait until a spirit will expert and a heaven-grade weapon appeared on Earth. Since the gun had disappeared, it should be the same as the metal chain. Ting Yu was probably dead by now. After drinking an entire bucket of porridge, Ren Baqin finally felt alive. Although he was still weak, it was only a matter of time before he recovered. After finishing his meal, Ren Baqin closed his eyes and entered the visualization of fire. He saw a long spear covered in golden veins and a silver-white metal chain leaning against each other on a river of lava. It was as if they were living together, soaking their feet. The spear trembled a few times when Ren Baqin came in and ignored him. The metal chain didn't care about him at all. It stuck one end into the lava, trembled, and pulled it back. After a long time, it stuck it in again. Ren Baqin, who had already experienced it once, wasn't too surprised. He just felt a toothache looking at these two fellows. The iron chain and the long spear had both settled down in his sea of consciousness. Would he have to gather 18 types of weapons in the future? When he reached the spirit will level and subdued them, he would be able to show off the 18 types of weapons in a fight. Even if he couldn't beat his opponent, he could still intimidate them with 18 heaven-grade weapons. Chapter 492. Principal Ren, Her Majesty is waiting for you. All of a sudden, Ren Baqin returned to the streets of Dayo from his room. The glaring and scorching sun made him unable to open his eyes for a moment. Then, he heard Gong Zhang's voice. Ren Baqin squinted his eyes and began to size up his surroundings. The surroundings were in ruins, and the original appearance of the street could no longer be seen. Dozens of winged cavalry warriors were standing there, and Captain Gong Zhang was standing beside him. He didn't know how long he had been waiting. Ting Yu is dead. Ren Baqin turned his head and asked. I'll leave the remaining head for Principal Ren. Gong Zhang grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. At that time, his gun was missing. Wasn't that exciting? This was what Ren Baqin was concerned about. This was the fourth most powerful expert in the world, and he was slightly stronger than the Empress. Ren Baqin really wanted to see what kind of expression he would have when the heaven-grade weapon that he had painstakingly created for decades disappeared. Gong Zhang's expression immediately turned strange. One had to know that heaven-grade weapons were condensed from spirits. They could be broken, but they couldn't be snatched away. This was common knowledge. However, this understanding was shattered by the person in front of him. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Principal Ren disappeared with that gun. He would never forget Ting Yu's expression and mournful howl. Even on the brink of death, Ting Yu was still trying to summon his divine weapon. After listening to Gong Zhang's account of what happened after he disappeared, Ren Baqian burst into laughter. You stabbed me with your spear, and I stole your spear. No matter what, he finally felt that he had gotten his revenge. Under the protection of many winged cavalry warriors, Ren Baqian truly witnessed the destructive power of this battle. It was estimated that at least 1/10 of the city had been turned into ruins. Broken walls and debris could be seen everywhere along the street. The stone slabs that were originally laid on the ground had also disappeared, and large pits could be seen everywhere. Looking into the distance, even part of the city wall had collapsed. Ting Yu wanted to escape, but unfortunately, he did not succeed. If it was the max level of 10, he had put 10 points into his spear skill points and 5 points into his boxing skill points. Without the divine weapon, the final result could be seen. As for the 2 bamboo spears in Wu City, ordinary weapons simply couldn't withstand the strength of a spirit will expert. What are the casualties? Ren Baqian asked. This time, we all hid far away, so it's fine. Where are the civilians? Ren Baqian pointed around. A few hundred. They were all affected by the aftermath. I saw that they dug out a lot of them from the ruins. Gong Jing scratched his head. He had not paid much attention to this matter. Almost all of the largest mansions in Wu City were in that area, but now they were all in ruins. This time around, they occupied a large courtyard. The Empress occupied the one with the best view. The courtyard could only be described as ordinary, but the original owner must have decorated it meticulously. There were flowers everywhere in the courtyard, and they weren't neat like ordinary courtyards. Instead, there were many kinds of flowers planted together. The effect was very unique, and it had a unique sense of beauty. In addition, the fragrance of these flowers gathered together to form a very pleasant smell. As soon as Ren Baqian walked into the courtyard, he felt refreshed. Your Majesty, I missed you so much. Ren Baqian shouted when he saw the Empress. After going through another round of life and death, Ren Baqian felt especially amiable when he saw the Empress. The Empress rolled her eyes at him. There are no more candies. Ren Baqian, Your Majesty, I almost died. Can't we be a little more gentle? Ren Baqian sighed. If she was gentle, she wouldn't be the Empress. Your Majesty, how are your injuries? Ren Baqian walked to the Empress's side, sat down, and asked softly. Not a big deal. Will it take another month this time? Ren Baqian asked subconsciously. When he saw the Empress raise her eyebrows, he knew that he had guessed correctly. The Empress just didn't want to make a move. If she did, she would definitely be injured. She would definitely be injured. Thinking about the 5th most powerful person in the world. Now, she was the 4th most powerful person in the world. It was such a sad story. Which expert in the novels and movies didn't have a sword that could chill 14 continents? Then, they would leave with a wave of their sleeves, and they would float away like an immortal. Each was more pretentious than the other. For example, Lu Xiaofeng and Shimin Chuexue. Who would be seriously injured every time they made a move. In any case, they would be seriously injured if they won and seriously injured if they lost. Oh, they hadn't lost yet. However, they would still be seriously injured every time. Do you have a problem with that? The Empress saw Ren Baqian's strange expression and looked at him with a murderous look. She squinted her beautiful eyes. Your Majesty, you are wise and virtuous. You will unify the world for thousands of generations. Ren Baqian exclaimed. The Empress then ignored him. Your Majesty, do you like this courtyard? I think the garden outside is quite unique. Renbochin changed the topic. Not bad. It's a bit rustic. The Empress said faintly. The palace happens to lack a gardener. Why don't we get someone to send him and his family to the palace to take care of the garden for your majesty? That's exactly what I want. The Empress nodded. Also, I saw a good carpenter previously and can get someone to send him back to the palace. Tianjing Basin still has some talents. The people in the palace are all clumsy and can't do such meticulous work. The Empress deeply agreed with Renbochin's words. It was indeed difficult for her people to do such meticulous work. Renbochin chatted with the Empress for a while. After lunch, he said, I'm going to see how the little monk, Qingyun Sword, and the others are doing. Go. The Empress waved her hand. Renbochin walked to the door before turning his head and saying, Your Majesty, if something like this happens again, avenge me. Thump. The Empress's wine pot smashed directly on his head. Renbochin was drenched and reeked of sorghum wine. Then, another cup. Then, a table. Renbochin quickly ran away with his head full of sorghum wine. He sighed in his heart. It was rare for him to be so heroic, but the Empress didn't even give him a chance to perform. Sigh, such is life. Renbochin sighed. However, the Empress's performance made him feel happy from the bottom of his heart. Where's Tingyu's body? Renbochin ran out of the courtyard and asked the guards. It's hanging on top of the city wall. Upon hearing this, Renbochin hurriedly got someone to bring a four-corned cow and ride it to the top of the city wall. He saw a head hanging high above the city wall. The connection between the head and the body was uneven, and it looked like it had been broken off by someone. As for the head, it had long been beaten to the point that it was unrecognizable. Is there nothing else? Renbochin asked. There is something else. Her Majesty has already soaked it in ash and is preparing to display it for a period of time before bringing it back to Lan City and burying it in the square in front of the palace. Bring me there. Since there were other things, Renbochin was prepared to bring them back to Earth for the Messier 87 department to study. As for this head, it was better to leave it here. After all, there were spirits in this world, and Tingyu's heaven-grade weapon was still soaking in his sea of knowledge. He didn't know if there were any remnants in this head. In the past, Renbochin felt that the Aboriginals' habit of burying the corpses of their enemies was a superstition of an uncivilized race. Now that he had more contact with them, he didn't dare to think so anymore. He had always been by the Empress's side, hadn't been to many places, and hadn't seen many things. Perhaps there were demons and monsters deep in the mountains and forests. Ning Kaichen had mentioned this to him in the past, but he had always treated it as bragging. Now that he thought about it, there might really be something in this world. If it existed, it was most likely to be in the head. Chapter 493. How have you been these few days? Renbochin felt a sense of closeness to the little monk in front of him. After all, he had brought the little monk from Earth. It could be said that the little monk was his only fellow countryman in this world, and he was still such a young child. Even Renbochin couldn't help but pay some attention to him. Upon hearing Renbochin's words, the little monk was on the verge of crying. He stuttered, "This place is so scary. The people here are so scary." The fiercest person he had seen in the temple was the president of the commandment yard, who always had a straight face. But compared to the people here, he was really kind. If he had to choose, he would rather face the president of the commandment yard every day. Not only were the people here twice as strong as ordinary people, but they also looked fierce. Many of them had scars on their faces and bodies. Even if they smiled at you, you would still be afraid. Not to mention, there was an earth-shattering battle that razed a large area of houses to the ground. All of this caused the little monk to live in fear for the past 2 days. Fake, it's all fake, Renbochin immediately said. Your negative karma is too heavy, so everything you see is scary. This place is like Azura hell. In fact, this is because your negative karma has obscured your vision. Everything you see is fake. The people here are actually kind and benevolent, but you've been deceived. After saying that, Renbochin gave himself a thumbs up. He really had the root of wisdom. He had such attainments just by reading Buddhist scriptures. This level of talent was probably unmatched by others. But they demolished the houses. They are preparing to demolish this place and rebuild it. You lied to me. The little monk burst into tears. I saw a human head. It was so scary. Those were extremely vicious people who had to resort to thunderous means. Even Buddhism has a glaring Vajra, let alone the secular world. There are many extremely vicious people here, so your master asked you to follow me to pass down the teachings of Buddhism and enlighten those who haven't committed any serious crimes. Is that so? The little monk asked while sobbing. Will your master push you into the fire pit? The little monk thought for a moment, then burst into tears again. Master must have found out that I stole his tea, tore his underwear, peed on his bed, roasted the rabbit in the mountain, stewed the fish in the lotus pond, killed so many mosquitoes, knocked over the everlasting lamp in front of the Buddha, ate the fruits on the tree, and even told Lin Guo that I would renounce asceticism and marry her when I grow up. Pooh! Renbochin almost spat out the tea in his mouth. He looked at the pitiful little monk and thought to himself, you deserve to die. If I were your master, you would have been dead by now. Basically, you've done everything a monk shouldn't do. To be able to do so many things at such a young age, he must be a talent. Renbochin comforted the little monk a few more times. After a long time, the little monk Xing Ruo finally stopped sobbing. In the future, we'll have to rely on passing down the Dharma. However, this place was different from the Tranquil Temple. If you went to the Tranquil Temple, you would come into contact with people who had a certain understanding of the Buddhist Dharma. In other words, in the place where you used to live, even the most ignorant person would have heard the phrase, Amitabha. However, here, no one knows about Buddhism, and no one knows what you're doing. As for the future, it's up to you. Whether you can stand firm here and be believed by people will depend on you. If you can cultivate to perfection one day, you might be able to meet your master. I understand, Xing Ruo said with reddened eyes. I can't teach you these things. You'll have to rely on yourself in the future. Think about it first. After the little monk left, Renbochin shook his head. Xing Ruo was too young. He hoped that Su Wen didn't send him here for no reason. He hoped that Xing Ruo could achieve what he wanted to see. Not long after the little monk left, before Renbochin sent someone to look for Qing Yun's sword and Ting Qingshan, they came to visit first. When they saw Su Wen, they stared at him for a long time. Su Wen's abduction of Ting Yu's heaven-grade weapon was more of a shock to them than to the Aboriginals. After all, the Aboriginals didn't cultivate their souls and focused on tempering their bodies. Although they were surprised by this matter, they weren't too shocked. However, they were different. When they thought about how the heaven-grade weapon, which they had painstakingly condensed, disappeared just like that, they felt like dying. They really wanted to know how Renbochin did it. Have you made arrangements for your men? Are there any problems? Renbochin didn't care about their gazes and asked first. Everything has been arranged, the two answered. They were only affected by the shock waves at the periphery and weren't affected much. That's good. Renbochin nodded. Did something happen for the two of you to come all the way here? Sir, the candidates have been selected. When will they come to look for you? Cui Cheng asked. Let them look for Gong Jing tomorrow morning and let him inform me, Renbochin said. He then thought of something and asked, the people we sent out should be arriving soon, right? Is there any news? It's about time, but there hasn't been any news yet. I'm afraid we'll have to wait for some time, Qing Yun's sword said. Inform me if there's any news. In addition, you guys don't have to stay there anymore. You can let them out every day. However, if anyone runs away, kill 2 of them. Start with those who are close to you. If a son runs away, kill his parents. If a disciple runs away, kill his master. If there's no one close to you, draw lots. Whoever gets caught will be unlucky. I'm giving you preferential treatment because I'm kind and giving you a chance. I hope you remember not to make mistakes and ruin your own path. If there's anyone who doesn't know their place, it's best to settle it yourself so that others won't be implicated, Renbaqian said faintly. The 2 of them tensed up when they heard Renbaqian's words. Although this person in front of them wasn't very powerful, his mind was like that of an evil spirit. If everyone had been imprisoned there, nothing would have happened. However, Renbaqian allowed everyone to move freely in the city. This meant that he wanted them to personally deal with those who didn't know their place. There was also the news that he had previously sent to the south. Ever since Qing Yun's sword and the others surrendered, they had been forced to slide down the abyss step by Renbaqian and were unable to escape. This person's mind was as vicious as that of an evil spirit. They really didn't know how much hatred there would be in Tianjing Basin in the future and how much trust there would be left. You may leave. Renbaqian waved his hand. After the 2 of them left, he went to look for the Empress. He accompanied the Empress to look at the flowers in the courtyard and casually told her about this matter. Oh. The Empress replied absent-mindedly. These kinds of conspiracies and tricks weren't her cup of tea. She preferred to be straightforward. Your Majesty, shall I read your palm? Renbaqian saw that she wasn't interested and didn't mention it again. He reached out and grabbed one of the Empress's fingers. You used this trick last time. The Empress rolled her eyes. Can't you show some sincerity? In that case, let's read your palm this time. Renbaqian immediately scrutinized the Empress's face. Recently, I've been practicing Buddhism and have benefited a lot. Chapter 494. Xing Ruo pushed open the door and saw a murderous guard standing outside. He was 1.9 meters tall and weighed more than 150 kilograms. Half of his body was covered in leather armor and was covered in scars. Xing Ruo's calves immediately cramped up. Fake, fake. Xing Ruo muttered to himself twice in his heart. He forced himself to calm down, turned around, and gently closed the door. Then, he tiptoed outside. Even though he had always behaved like an ordinary kid and was a little timid, Renbaqian always doubted whether he could do well. However, he was sent by Su Wen and naturally wasn't a slow-witted person. After thinking for 2 days in his room, he figured it out and was ready to take the first step out of this residence to take a look. That guard turned his head to look at him. The way he looked at him as if he was examining his prey immediately made Xing Ruo shiver. He quickly lowered his head and hurriedly walked out. It's fake, it's fake, it's fake. They are all kind-looking good people. It's all because of negative karma. Xing Ruo kept muttering in his heart. Then, he bumped into the person who was entering the courtyard and was knocked over. Well, kid, watch where you walk. Gong Zheng was the one who bumped into him. He knew that this little baldy was related to Renbaqian, so he lowered his head to pick him up and put him on the ground. This process was no different from picking up a doll. Where are you going? Gong Zheng stood there like a wall, blocking even the sunlight and casting a shadow over Xing Ruo. Coupled with his sinister smile, Xing Ruo pouted and looked like he was about to cry. Fake, it's all fake. Xing Ruo shouted with his eyes closed. What's fake? Gong Zheng scratched his head. Was this little baldy a fool? Xing Ruo opened his eyes and trembled as he said, "You are a good person." "Of course. Whoever dares to say that I'm not a good person, I will tear him apart, pull out his intestines, wrap them around his neck, and strangle him to death. Finally, I will chop him into meat paste and feed him to the babe beast." Gong Jing sneered. Xing Ruo was frightened by Gong Zhang's ferocity and almost turned around to run back to his room. But thinking that he could only rely on himself now, Xing Ruo suppressed his fear and stood there trembling. "It's fake. Actually, you're kind and benevolent. It's just that the negative karma has covered my eyes." Gong Zhang. Kind-looking and kind. Kind and kind. Was he referring to himself? It should be, right? That seemed to be the case. "Amitabha, I want to go out," Xing Ruosui said with a trembling voice. "Oh, be careful." Gong Jing scratched his head. Hearing this ferocious-looking man in front of him tell him to be careful, Xing Ruo instantly felt that it was just as the Arhat had said. The ferociousness was all fake. It was all just a facade. Xing Ruo put his palms together in front of Gong Jing. Then, he carefully moved a few steps to the side before quickly walking out the door. Gong Jing turned his head and looked at the back of the fleeing figure, then said to the guards in the courtyard, "Did you hear that? He said that I'm kind and benevolent, and that children don't lie. It must be true." The guard pursed his lips. "Don't you know what kind of person you are? You don't think so?" When Gong Jing saw him curling his lips, he immediately flew into a rage. He raised his fist, which was as big as a clay pot, and sent the guard flying. After leaving the courtyard, Xing Ruo felt a lot bolder. When a group of winged cavalry walked toward him, he immediately stood to the side and thought to himself, "It's fake." He put his palms together and said, "Amitabha." Then, he saw two guards standing to the side. He thought to himself, "It's fake." He put his palms together and said, "Amitabha." However, he was surrounded by winged cavalry warriors and people from the Protectorate of the South. When Xing Ruo encountered people for the third time, he stood to the side and said, "It's fake. Amitabha. It's fake. Amitabha." Xing Ruo stood on the side of the street and looked at the aboriginal soldiers passing by. "It's fake. Amitabha." Xing Ruo realized that these people weren't as scary as they looked. Just as the Arhat had said, he became a little bolder. The group of winged cavalry warriors and guards were baffled. What fake Amitabha? Could it be a local dialect? Was it actually a greeting? It took the little monk an hour to walk out of the street. He was finally able to occasionally see ordinary people, which made him feel a lot more at ease. Along the way, he looked at the quaint buildings on both sides of the street and the ordinary pedestrians. Whenever he met someone, he would say, "Amitabha." After strolling until noon, Xing Ruo felt a little hungry. He found a roadside shop, put his palms together, and said, "Amitabha. Benefactor, can you give me a bowl of water and a bowl of rice?" The shopkeeper's face immediately turned black when he heard this. "If a little beggar like you asked for a cup of water and some food, I'll give it to you. You actually want rice? Those things are shipped from Great Xia, and even I can't afford them. No, get lost." The little monk wasn't discouraged after being chased out and continued to beg for alms at the next shop. Get lost. The second shopkeeper's reaction was exactly the same as the first one. "Amitabha. Benefactor, can you give me a bowl of water and a bun? Pancakes are fine too." The little monk lowered his request at the third shop. "No, leave quickly. If you don't leave, I'll beat you up." The shopkeeper immediately picked up his broom after hearing this. Arhat is right. The people here don't respect Buddha, don't know true kindness, and don't have a merciful heart. Those who look like fiends are actually kind and charitable. They look easy to talk to, but are actually very vicious, Xing Ruo thought to himself. Finally, a few winged cavalry warriors who had seen him before passed by. Seeing that he was hungry, they threw him a piece of jerky and a pot of water, which made him feel very grateful. He was even more certain of his thoughts. Fake Amitba. Principal Ren, our brothers who went to the north will be back in the city in 2 hours. I heard that they brought back a lot of people. How should we settle them? A guard entered the room and asked Ren Baqian. What do you mean fake Amitba? Ren Baqian was confused. It's the dialect of the southern natives of Tianjin Basin, and it means to say hello, the guard explained seriously. Recently, it seemed to be quite popular to say this. In any case, he saw a few guards who came in from outside greet him this way. Oh. Ren Baqian was a little suspicious, but he didn't think too much about it and called for the guards to leave the city. At this moment, besides the original Aboriginal guards, there were 6 other people following behind Ren Baqian. 4 of them were in their 30s or 40s, and they were all from the Lingshan sect. 2 of them used swords, 1 used a spear, and the last used a pair of steel sabers. The other 2 were slightly older and were from Qingyun's sword. 1 looked like an old farmer and used a fork as a weapon. The other had white hair and beard, but he had a sturdy build and was only slightly weaker than the Aboriginals. He used a long saber. All 6 of them were earth will experts and weren't considered weak. In the past, they were all experts, but now, they had become Ren Baqian's guards. However, seeing that the weakest among the winged cavalry was at the earth will level, they didn't feel that it was unfair. If there was, it was because they had fought to the death before, but now, they were mixed in with the Aboriginals as guards, which made them feel somewhat uncomfortable. The group left the city and didn't wait for long before they saw a group of people coming from afar. At the front were the people from the Golden Ring residence, and behind them were hundreds of people. Everyone's hands were tied up, and their clothes, which used to be gorgeous, were now dirty. Beside this group of people, there were dozens of winged cavalry warriors riding their mounts and moving forward slowly. Behind these people, there was a large number of carriages. However, the carriages weren't loaded with people, but with looted goods. Sir! When everyone arrived at the foot of the city, the winged cavalry warriors came up to greet them. Was everything all right along the way? Ren Baqian asked. Sir, they were very well behaved. Not bad. Did you meet the army from the Protectorate of the South? Sir, there are still a few cities that haven't been cleared along the way, and they will only arrive in a few days. Ren Baqian nodded, looked at the uneasy people behind them, and said, Release them. He then raised his voice and said, You aren't here as prisoners, but as a sign of friendly coexistence between the people of Tianjin Basin and the Aboriginals. The people of Tianjin Basin have many misunderstandings about the Aboriginals and the imperial court. I hope that when you return in the future, you can dispel this misunderstanding. Awkward silence. Misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding at all. Ren Baqian didn't mind and continued, I gave you a chance and was lenient, but it doesn't mean that I will always be lenient. After entering the city, be well behaved and know your place. Unless you are stronger than the one hanging at the top of the city wall. Sir Ren, who is that on top of the city wall? Zhang Chongkong had been staring at the few people behind Ren Baqian since the beginning. He had seen these people before. 4 of them were highly ranked experts in the Lingshan sect. He didn't expect them to be following behind Ren Baqian. The other 2 were experts from the hidden village. It seemed like the Lingshan sect and Qingyun's sword had surrendered. Who was that on top of the city wall? Based on what Ren Baqian said, this person's identity wasn't simple. Spirit Spear Tingyu. I'm sure you have heard of him. Ren Baqian sneered. The 4th most powerful expert in the world, Spirit Spear Tingyu. Everyone was shocked. How did Tingyu appear here? How did he die here? Chapter 495. The Three River Basin was the largest plain in Tianjing Basin. It was the granary of Tianjing Basin, where the land was fertile and the population density was the highest. This piece of land only occupied 1/10 of Tianjing Basin, but it supported 1/3 of Tianjing Basin's population. There were a total of 7 cities in this area that dotted the plain like 7 pearls. These 7 pearls were controlled by the 3 major factions. Recently, the 3 major factions had mobilized their troops to this area, causing the people in the Three River Basin to be in a state of panic. They didn't know if there was going to be a war again. A few days later, the news gradually spread, and the people in the Three River Basin knew that there was indeed going to be a war. However, it wasn't between the 3 major factions but against the Aboriginals. The south of the city is recruiting soldiers. I heard that the salary is quite high, and they can get 2 taels of silver a month. Fatty, since you have nothing to do, why don't you go and take a look? With your physique, you might be able to make a name for yourself in the army. Pfft. Even if I'm alive to earn money, I have to be alive to spend it. How many people can survive a war with the barbarians? Those barbarians are all 8 feet tall and have bloody mouths like wild beasts in the mountains. They're not something that you and I can imagine. Just say that you're a coward. I heard that if those barbarians attack, they will massacre the entire city. Many people in the north have been killed, and people are running into the mountains to survive. In my opinion, since we're going to die anyway, we might as well fight for it. Who knows, we might even be able to make a contribution and become a minor official in the future. Massacre the entire city. Is that true? It should be true. Don't you know what those barbarians are like? Besides, many people are saying that. Now, people are in a state of panic and thinking about how to escape if the barbarians attack. If that's the case, we have to fight with our lives on the line. A middle-aged man walked along the street, stopped for a moment, listened to the idle chatter in the alley, and continued walking. He didn't know who spread the rumor of a massacre. Although it made people panic, it also aroused the blood of many people. In just half a month, the 3 major factions recruited many new soldiers. However, the new soldiers who hadn't gone through training would probably be weak in the knees if they encountered the army of the Protectorate of the South. The middle-aged man walked to a mansion in the city and announced. A moment later, a middle-aged man of similar age came out and laughed in surprise. "Junior brother, why are you here? No one will be able to escape such a huge storm. Be it the big fish or the shrimps at the bottom of the water, they were all carried forward by the wind and waves. Since that's the case, why don't we go to the surface of the water to see how spectacular the scenery is?" The middle-aged man said with a smile. "Let's enter the mansion and sit down first." Senior brother laughed. After a while, the 2 of them sat down and waited for the servant to pour the tea. The senior brother then asked, "Master, how is it? How's the sect?" "Master suffered some injuries and is currently recuperating. As for the sect, don't mention it." The junior brother sighed and said. "Master went to Wu City. What happened in the sect?" "The ancient race is here to ask for our surrender." When they reached the door, the people inside were quarreling incessantly. "I heard that the Hidden Village and Spiritual Mountain sect have surrendered." When the senior brother heard this, he was shocked. The ancient race was actually asking them to surrender. Didn't the ancient race always kill without leaving any survivors? The Hidden Village and Spiritual Mountain sect had surrendered. Qing Yun's sword from the Hidden Village and Zhua Qing from the Spiritual Mountain sect had been famous in the martial world for decades. Not long ago, Qing Yun's sword had even gathered everyone to besiege and kill Qi Zixiao. Such people actually surrendered. Really? The junior brother nodded. I heard that the person in charge of the ancient race this time isn't Qi Zixiao or Butcher Shiwanya. Then who could it be? I still remember that there was news that Qi Zixiao found a husband who wasn't from the ancient race. It's him? Yes, this person is called Renbaqian. This time, he is the person in charge of the surrender. It is said that he promised to let bygones be bygones as long as the ancient race surrendered. He also promised that the people of Tianjing Basin could go out and live together with the Aboriginals in the future. When the senior brother heard this, his expression changed drastically. If this was said, many people would be tempted. What else do you know, Junior? This time, it was the people from the hidden village and the Lingshan sect who came to the sect. As a result, the sect has been quarreling incessantly for the past few days. Many people think that since Qi Zixiao and the winged cavalry have arrived in Wu City, the three major forces are no match for them no matter what. Furthermore, the other party has promised to let bygones be bygones and let us go out. Otherwise, when the Aboriginal army arrives, I'm afraid that the entire sect will be slaughtered. When the senior brother heard this, his expression changed. What did Master say? Master didn't say anything. However, I saw that Master didn't agree, so I wanted to ask Senior for your opinion. After all, Senior has better foresight than all of us. The senior brother gritted his teeth and said, no matter what, I will not surrender. I know. Senior, your parents died in the hands of Butcher Shiwanya. The hatred of killing your parents is absolutely irreconcilable. The junior brother nodded. If they want to surrender, let them do so. In this way, no matter what happens in the future, the sect will be able to preserve its foundation. Since the sect is quarreling, it must be because the other party has conditions for surrendering. Is it because the disciples are not allowed to join the revolutionary army formed by the three major forces? The senior brother raised his head and asked. Senior is right. The junior brother smiled and nodded. Can't they remove our names from the sect? The senior brother asked again. This is what the sect is arguing about. The junior brother sighed slightly. What is there to consider about this? Expel those of us who want to fight from the sect, and the rest of us can just surrender to the north. If the revolutionary army wins, with us around, the sect won't be affected, and we can be recruited in the future. If the Aboriginals win, then the sect will be able to preserve its foundation. The senior brother said disapprovingly. Senior, do you think we have a chance of winning? The junior brother asked. Even if the odds are slim, I'm willing to fight with my life on the line. The senior brother then cupped his hands and said, Junior, this is a serious matter. I'll go and see the governor first. I'll talk to you when I'm back. Senior, please wait. Is there anything else, Junior? Master has always been concerned about you, so he asked me to bring something for you to protect yourself, the junior brother said. Thank you for worrying about me, my unfilial disciple. The senior brother felt warmth in his heart when he heard this. He watched as the junior brother untied a cylinder from his waist. This was left behind by Master. It said that it was obtained from Baiji Pavilion in Great Xia. It can shoot out 3 rounds of bone-piercing nails. If you are in danger, you can press it here. Following the junior brother's action, the cylinder inadvertently faced the senior brother, and 3 bone-piercing nails suddenly shot out from the cylinder. Junior, you. Before the senior brother could react, he was hit by 3 bone-piercing nails, and blood spurted out from his chest like a fountain. Senior, Renbaqian is more vicious than you think. There are 3 earth will experts in the sect. As long as one of them joins the revolutionary army, their whole family will be executed. If there are 6 man will experts, as long as 2 of them join, their whole family will be executed. Although there aren't many people in our sect, many of them have entered the army over the years. Unless all of you are killed, the foundation of the sect will not be able to be preserved. The junior brother sighed with a pained look on his face. Did Master send you? The senior brother asked weakly as he lay on the ground with blood dripping from his mouth. Master and the chief aren't willing to surrender. Therefore, the foundation of the sect can't be preserved. If nothing goes wrong, everyone will die. The junior brother continued to sigh. Then why did you? Fortunately, that Sir Ren gave me another way to live. As long as I kill a fellow disciple of the same strength and bring his head to surrender, I can live. That's the proof of my allegiance. I still want to live. Senior brother wants to take revenge, and so do I. However, I'm different from your enemy. My enemy is Siakuin, the capital of the southern metropolis. You don't know him, right? Even Master doesn't know him, and I haven't told anyone. Therefore, if I surrender, I can live, and I can take revenge. Why not? Therefore, I need to borrow a head to prove my loyalty. The people in the sect live together, and if I am discovered, I won't even have the chance to escape. The risk is too great. After thinking about it, I think it's the easiest to kill you. The junior brother said softly, squatted in front of the senior brother, and said, You guys have no chance of winning if you fight with those barbarians. Not to mention Qi Zixiao and Shi Wanya, how can the 1,500 Earth-will experts of the winged cavalry resist? Senior, you are going to die anyway. Why don't you help me? In the future, there will be someone to visit your grave during festivals. Phew. Phew. The senior brother lay on the ground, panting and spitting out blood. The bone-piercing nails had pierced his lungs, making him unable to speak, and his eyes gradually lost their luster. Chapter 496. Commander, Liuqing's Cloud Cavalry officer Zhang Guo was assassinated and his head was taken away. Although the city was searched, no one was found. It is said that it was his junior who did it. In the residence of the warlord of Shuiyang City, a middle-aged man sat in the seat of honor and listened to the report. This man was Xia Kuan, the commander of the southern metropolis, and he was also the leader of the southern metropolis. Among the three major powers in Tianjing Basin, the North Alliance had the highest leader, the southern metropolis had the commander, and the Green Bellflower was led by a lady with the Flower Queen as their leader. It's because of that news again. These people deserve to die. Xia Kuan slammed the table angrily. Inform everyone of this news. No matter who they see, whether they are old friends or fellow disciples from afar, even if they are blood relatives, they must be on guard. Everyone. As a result, everyone will be in a panic. Although spreading the news of the massacre has caused instability in the hearts of the people, it is only the civilians who are panicking. This has aroused the morale of many civilians and made our recruitment a lot smoother. However, this incident has caused all the officials to feel uneasy. How can we do anything if we are always on guard against each other? Someone stepped forward and said. So what if you say it? If this continues, I'm afraid that there will be more casualties. Moreover, how can this matter be hidden? I'm afraid that many people know about it before you and me. Instead of hiding it, it is better to tell everyone so that they don't die at the hands of their fellow disciples or relatives. My heart aches. Pass down the order, Xia Kuan said in a deep voice. Also, offer a large reward for those who sneak in. Inform all the sections. The other party's message is very clear. If they don't surrender now, they will be massacred. Either they surrender or they join the volunteer army. There is no third option, Xia Kuan said. Finally, send more experts to guard the Wang estuary. Those who want to surrender to the north. Kill them. The situation in the North Alliance, the Green Bellflower, and the southern metropolis was similar. Ren Baqian's move caused quite a stir in the three major powers. From time to time, there were news of experts who had joined the army being assassinated by fellow disciples, and there were even cases of internal strife. This made everyone even more anxious, and their morale dropped significantly. In Wu City, Renbaqian was sitting in the main hall with 6 people standing in 2 rows below him. Jingyu, Jiang Boding, Zuolang, and Zhong Hexing were from the Lingshan sect. Among them, Zuolang was Zhou Cheng's nephew. The other 2 were Zhu Nong and Xie Yunbing. They were from the hidden village and had met Renbaqian more than once. The 6 of them looked at the tip of the spear sticking out of Renbaqian's head with a look of astonishment on their faces. It was indeed rare to see a spear tip sticking out of his head. How are those people now? Renbaqian crossed his legs, fanned himself with one hand, and took a sip of iced Coke with the other. The cola bottle was right next to his hand. It was hot these 2 days, so it was better to drink iced cola. As for ice, it was also easy to make. Saltpeter could be found everywhere. Sir, most of them are sincere in seeking refuge with you. Zhou Cheng cupped his hands and said. Most of them, but there's still a small number of them who aren't sincere. Renbaqian raised his head slightly. Everyone's hearts tightened. However, this is normal. There's no knowing what's in a man's heart. With so many people, it's hard to guarantee that there are some who can't see the situation clearly and don't know when to advance or retreat. Inform the 2 gentlemen to take action when it's time to do so. You can't be soft-hearted now. If it's my turn to arrange for people to take action, kill without mercy. Yes. Zhou Cheng responded. Also, do you know that little baldy? Get 2 people to follow him and stay away from him. Just don't let anything happen to him and ignore everything else, Renbaqian said again. Yes. Is there anything else? Sir, there's news that the entire Shaoshan sect has surrendered and is rushing to Wu City. Not bad. When they arrive, bring them to me. After all, we still have to show our sincerity. Renbaqian nodded. He then waved his hand and said, You may leave. After everyone left, Renbaqian opened the collar of his shirt. It's really hot today and making me irritable. He got up and went to the Empress's room in the courtyard next door. Greetings, Your Majesty. Oh. The Empress looked up at Renbaqian before lowering her head to look at the book in her hand. She had nothing to do these days, so she casually flipped through some of the ancient books and records that she had plundered from the various sections. Renbaqian took out an antique wooden box that exuded a strange fragrance and placed it on the table. Your Majesty, I went to the warehouse to take a look this morning and found this thing. If it was in the hands of someone else, it would be a waste. Although it's not good enough for you, there aren't many things in this world that are good enough for you. This thing is barely good enough for you. The Empress raised her head and looked at the box. Renbaqian opened the box, and the item inside immediately appeared in front of her. It was a golden hairpin with an egg-sized ruby carved at the end. It was a picture of a phoenix spreading its wings and about to fly. Not only was the phoenix carved very lifelike, but the ruby also seemed to have flames sealed within it. As long as light shone on it, it would emit an extremely magnificent light. The Empress's eyes immediately lit up when she saw it. She took it out and looked at it carefully. There's another characteristic of this item. Renbaqian smiled as he took it from the Empress's hand. With a wave of it in the air, a loud and clear clang, clang sound was immediately heard. It sounded like the chirping of birds and also like the sound of stringed instruments. It is said that the cry of a phoenix is like this, Renbaqian said as he put the hairpin back in the Empress's hand. The Empress was even more delighted when she saw this. She put down the book in her hand and played with the hairpin. After a while, Renbaqian saw that the Empress's interest had waned and said, Why don't I put it on for Your Majesty? The Empress spread out her hand. Renbaqian picked up the hairpin and walked to the Empress's back. He gently touched the Empress's fine black hair and took off the hairpin. Her hair immediately fell down like a waterfall. Renbochin held the 2 hairpins in his hand and fell into deep thought. Why did her hair fall down after he took it off? How did she tie her hair up? The Empress sat there for a long time, but Renbochin still didn't move at all. This made the Empress a little impatient and her fingers lightly tapped on the table twice. After thinking about it, Your Majesty's bare face is already devastatingly beautiful. Why do you need this thing to embellish Your Majesty? Renbochin walked in front of the Empress and said seriously as he placed the hairpin back into the box. I feel that Your Majesty's current demeanor is already flawless and you don't need it anymore. So, you said you don't need it after you spread my hair down. The Empress wasn't moved by Renbochin's flowery words at all. She raised her eyebrows and asked. This. I feel that Your Majesty is already the most beautiful scenery in the world. Adding or removing even a little bit would destroy this perfection. You were standing behind me just now, so I could only see your hair. Bang! Ouch! After a while, Renbochin collapsed on the chair with a bloody nose and swollen face. It was still cooler where the Empress was. Not only was there a fan blowing ice cubes, but there was also the cold murderous aura that the Empress emitted from time to time, making people feel comfortable from head to toe. The next day, it was still the same room. Zhuo Qing strode into the room with a bag and threw it on the ground. 5 or 6 heads rolled out. Sir Ren, these are the ones who aren't well behaved at the moment. Zhuo Qing cupped his fists and said calmly. His gaze was calm. The lives of the entire Lingshan sect and the future of the sect were in the hands of the person in front of him. Even if one of them was his disciple, he had no choice but to be ruthless. He had already given them a chance, but Zhuoleng's message yesterday made him know that he couldn't wait any longer. Mr. Zhua is a smart person. You know what is important, what can be done, and what can't be done. I am most at ease with you. As Renbochin spoke, he glanced at the heads on the ground and said, it's just that some people aren't that smart. Not only are they courting death, but they also want to drag others down with them. This kind of person is like a rat's poop spoiling a bowl of soup. It's good that Mr. Zhua knows what to do. I will have to trouble Mr. Zhua to pay more attention in the future. At this moment, Renbochin was more at ease with Zhuo Qing. Now, Zhuo Qing was completely tied to him, and there was no way out. With such a person taking care of things, Renbochin could save a lot of trouble. At the very least, the winged cavalry warriors wouldn't be able to tell if someone was uneasy or not. On the contrary, it was easier for the Lingshan sect to detect this. I still have to ask for a favor from you. One of these people is my disciple, and I hope Sir Ren can allow me to bury him properly, Zhuo Qing said. Chapter 497. In the following days, Wu City began to bustle with activity. First, the reinforcements from the Protectorate of the South finally arrived. 5,000 soldiers swept through almost half of the north. Upon entering Tianjing Basin, the reinforcements split into 5 teams and attacked at the same time. Thanks to Renbochin's previous arrangements, many cities directly opened their gates and surrendered. This reduced casualties and saved a lot of time. For cities that surrendered directly, the reinforcements passed through the city without stopping, leaving only a few dozen people to guard the city. After all, a few dozen man-will experts were considered a formidable force in an ordinary city. Even the elite soldiers of Great Xia needed 10 times the number of soldiers to contend with them, let alone these defenders with bone knives. Even if something happened, as long as no earth-will experts or above attacked, some of these soldiers would be able to escape. When Renbochin returned from the Golden Ring residence, the winged cavalry warriors that he sent out almost wiped out all the earth-will experts and above in the north. Even if there were any experts who escaped, they were now hiding in the dark and didn't dare to show themselves. There were also a few cities that resisted resolutely. The separated troops gathered together and attacked. After breaking through the city, all the officials were killed, and the air in the entire city was filled with the smell of blood. As for the chaos that occurred after they left because there were no officials, they didn't care. How to settle the city down was a problem that others had to consider. Killing all those who dared to resist was what they should do. Under such circumstances, it took a full 40 days for them to reach Wu City, which they could have reached in 15 days. They also wiped out the scattered resistance forces in the north. The person who led the reinforcements was an acquaintance of Ren Baqian, Hong Qing. He was Hong Wu's son and Hong Xian's father. Previously, during the battle with Great Xia in the north, Hong Wu had led the reinforcements from the protectorate of the south to the north. Ren Baqian had met him before, and this was the second time he had seen him. Wu City was just a small city, and the arrival of more than 4,000 reinforcements almost filled the city. At the same time, the problem was the lack of food in Wu City. Previously, the 1,000 soldiers and 800 winged cavalry warriors had eaten up almost all the provisions in Wu City. Even the rations of the defenders were looted. Now that this batch of reinforcements had arrived, Wu City was completely out of food. "Your Majesty, there's not enough food in the city. We can only last for 3 days at most," Shi Huanya told the Empress. "In my opinion, everyone in the city can only keep 5 days' worth of rations. The rest must be handed over. It should be enough to make up for a week's worth of rations. If we only send them out from Wu City, we'll be forcing the civilians to die." Even with 5 days of rations, he could only live for about 10 days. Looking at the crops outside the city, it will take at least a month before they can be harvested. Ren Baqian shook his head. "Does Sir Ren have any ideas?" "Wu City has to provide grain." However, Wu City was not the only place to send supplies. Every city in the north had to hand over 2,000 don of rations, which was 100 carts. They would be responsible for their own personnel and losses. In this way, 30 cities can have 60 days of rations. 60 days is enough to quell the rebels in the south. "It doesn't matter even if it's not enough," Ren Baqian said. "As long as they took down the 3 rivers, there would be a large amount of rations there. In this world, 1 stone weighed about 50 kilograms. 2,000 stones weighed about 100,000 kilograms, which was barely enough to feed 6,000 soldiers and 800 winged cavalry warriors for 2 days. There was a lot of grain in Tianjing Basin, but very little livestock. Ordinary soldiers could only eat 1 or 2 kilograms of millet a day, while the winged cavalry warriors needed 25 kilograms. These days, the smoke from kitchen chimneys in the city had never stopped. It had to be said that the Aboriginals' strong fighting power was supported by their huge appetite. Previously, when they fought with Great Xia, there were many livestock in the north and abundant meat. This wasn't obvious. After all, ordinary meat could provide 5 times more energy than the rations. Now that they had arrived in Tianjing Basin, this problem was completely exposed. Ren Baqian only wanted to say that the Aboriginals were really a bunch of foodies. The nearest cities, Sifeng and Chindi, will take less than 2 days to reach Wu City. The further cities, Mingqing and Xinyu, will take less than 3 days to reach here. The rations from these 4 cities will be able to last for 8 days. With this time, they would be able to deliver the rations to the faraway cities. Therefore, there is no need to consider the issue of rations. After Ren Baqian finished speaking, the Empress nodded. "As for the issue of rations, do as Principal Ren said. In addition, transfer a batch of livestock from Goose City over. Before the war, they have to eat their fill. Otherwise, they will be weak," the Empress said faintly. "Yes," Shi Huanya replied. "In addition, we have stayed here for too long and should move south. Now that the rebels have retreated and gathered in the Three Rivers Valley, they probably want to rely on the Wang Estuary and Dolong Ridge, these two strategic locations to fight against the army of the imperial court. They have abandoned 6 cities between the Three Rivers Valley and Wu City, Lingdong, Jiangbei, Liugo, Jinsha, Pingjiang, and Han'an. Just the day before yesterday, the garrisons of these 6 cities have already been withdrawn. Presumably, the people of these 6 cities are in chaos and suffering. They are looking forward to the army of the imperial court, hoping to see Her Majesty's face as soon as possible and rescue them as soon as possible. Now, the time is almost right. In my opinion, we should first take down these 6 cities and face the rebels across the Three Rivers Valley. This will increase the pressure on them, Renbochin said. He had heard about the withdrawal of the garrisons of these 6 cities from the practitioners who had rushed to Wu City in the past 2 days. He had to admit that these practitioners were really useful at times. Renbochin was even considering using these practitioners to form a cavalry battalion. Whether it was in Tianjing Basin or against the other countries, they would be useful. Shi Wanya scratched his head. Looking forward. How can you tell, Principal Ren? Why do I see that they are so scared? Shi Wanya pointed at the spear tip and the metal chain on Renbochin's head and said subconsciously, Sir Ren, they have appeared again. It's fine. They are just kids who find everything new and can't stay put. They will be fine after some time. Renbochin didn't care. A heaven-grade weapon would only gain consciousness after the death of its owner. The newly born consciousness was like a baby, looking at everything new and active. This was very normal. A kitten or puppy would still sniff around. It would be fine after a long time. Didn't the metal chain rarely appear now? Shi Wanya stared at the iron chain wrapped around the tip of the spear. It looked like a whip. After some discussion, Shi Wanya sent people to inform the cities to prepare provisions. Renbochin looked for Zhu Qing and asked him to deploy manpower and set off with 2,000 soldiers to suppress the riots in the cities that had lost all the officials and garrisons. At the same time, he would do a good job of pacifying them. Chapter 498. A few days later, the Empress's carriage arrived at Jiangbei City. Jiangbei City was the last city to enter the Sanjiang district. The Wang Estuary was 80 kilometers south of the city, and the Sanjiang district was to the south of the Wang Estuary. The winged cavalry entered the city first, followed by the Empress's carriage. There were traces of chaos in the city. Not far away, there were charred houses and bloodstains that hadn't been wiped off. After all the guards and officials left, it was normal for there to be chaos in the city. Those civilians who didn't know much were fearful. A little spark could start a prairie fire. At this time, the evilness of human nature would be revealed. This was unavoidable since ancient times. This was a part of human nature. When the Shaoshan sect arrived at Jiangbei, the city began to show signs of chaos. Renbochin was 4 days late when he sent his men. It was said that when the army and the Lingshan sect arrived, the city was already in chaos. The shops were basically smashed, burned, and looted, especially shops that sold necessities such as food and salt. Many civilians in the city were killed or injured in the chaos. Previously, a group of people escaped from the city, and the army killed another group to suppress the riot. This city, which originally had a population of 100,000, was only left with 60,000 when the Empress and her men entered the city. What are they doing? Who allowed them to be here? The Empress sat in the imperial chariot and looked at the commoners who were standing by the side of the street with their heads bowed and shivering. They are welcoming you, just like what you saw in Lan City, Renbochin said while holding a wine cup in one hand. Renbochin said as he held a wine glass in one hand. As for the person who arranged this, it should be someone from the Lingshan sect, right? The people of Lan City are my people. They sincerely support me and welcome me. And these people? The Empress said faintly. These people are also your Majesty's people, Renbochin said faintly as he looked at the civilians who were fearful. Your Majesty, if a ruler treats his subjects like his own hands and feet, his subjects will treat him like a confidant. If a ruler treats his subjects like dogs and horses, his subjects will treat him like a fellow countryman. If a ruler treats his subjects like dirt, his subjects will treat him like an enemy. These people are still fearful. As long as they can live and work in peace and contentment in your country, they will sincerely support you like the people of Lawn City in the future. Who said this? It makes sense, the Empress praised. It was said by the ancients. He said a lot of things, and they were all very reasonable, Renbochin replied after thinking for a while. In the future, tell me more about him. To be able to say something like that, I'm sure he's not an ordinary person. As the Empress spoke, she looked at the commoners. I don't really like them. Whether they like it or not, they are a part of Dayo. The reason why His Majesty disliked them was because they were restless. However, there was also a reason for this. Among them, there were people who kept instilling certain ideas into them. In fact, as long as they are appeased and mentally dominated, they can do a lot of things. After a few decades, a new generation of young people would grow up, and they would become His Majesty's true subjects. Furthermore, these people were not living a good life. They were just trying their best to survive. As long as they can live and work in peace and contentment, I think most of them won't have any other thoughts. Just like the people on both sides, they had just experienced chaos and pain. Now that the army had pacified the city, they could return to their peaceful lives. Although they seem to be afraid now, that's only because they don't understand His Majesty. How would His Majesty know that some of them aren't rejoicing in their hearts? Renbochin poured the wine into his mouth, held an empty cup, and praised, "This flower wine is really good. Although it's like a raging fire, it has a sweet and glutinous taste and a hint of floral fragrance." Qing Yuan and Hong Yuan, who were beside him, glared at him and unwillingly poured the wine for him. The two of them had painstakingly picked many kinds of flowers to brew this wine for Her Majesty, but this guy had drunk so much of it in the past 2 days. What happens to these people is something you need to consider, the Empress said faintly. She wasn't good at this kind of thing. Since Renbochin could do it well, she would leave it to him. He also needed some achievements to establish himself in the imperial court. Although he had done many things before, nothing was more dazzling than pacifying Tianjing Basin. If he couldn't do it well, he would kill all these people. The Empress was staying at the warlord's residence in Zhongbei. However, it seemed like the warlord's residence had also suffered a calamity. Many places had traces of being burned, and some of the decorations in the residence had also been swept away. Even though the people from the Lingshan sect who had arrived earlier had already arranged for people to renovate the residence and made a batch of items to decorate it, the patchwork of things in the residence made it look even more shabby. It gave people the feeling that everything in the residence was out of place. For example, the flowers in the courtyard that had just been dug out from an unknown place looked like weeds. There were also a few chairs and tables in the hall. One of the chairs had some color differences, and its style was different as well. It was obvious that it was patchwork. As for the inside of the room, there was no need to talk about it. The bright red and green quilts made Renbochin wonder if those people had different aesthetic standards. Your Majesty, please take a rest here first. I will get someone to send bedding over later. Renbochin walked around the room and retreated. After bidding farewell to the Empress, he summoned the people from the Lingshan sect. Are there any people from the south in the city these few days? What's the situation in the south? Renbochin asked. Sir, dozens of people have arrived in the past few days and are waiting to be summoned. As for the south, the rebel army has arranged for many experts near the Wang estuary to intercept and kill those who came to seek refuge with you. It is said that the same situation is happening at Mount Dulong, and many people have been killed. Rebel army. Ren Baqin squinted at him and said, "Your thinking is very dangerous." "Sir, it's my fault. It's the rebel army." "They are the rebel army, but they call themselves the rebel army." "It was a slip of the tongue, and I hope you won't blame me," the man said as he broke out in a cold sweat. "Remember, we are officials, and they are bandits. You are working for me and Her Majesty. Always remember your identity," Ren Baqin reminded him again. "Yes." "How many people were sent by the rebel army to intercept them? How strong are they?" Ren Baqin asked slowly. "There are more than 100 people at the Wang estuary, mainly from the Bamboo Mountain sect, Shaoqing Temple, and the Yang sect. Among them, there are more than 10 earth will experts. The Mount Dulong should be guarded by people from the Mengxing Pavilion and the Yujiang Gang. In addition, there are thousands of soldiers stationed at each place." However, that was news from 3 days ago. Now that the Imperial Army is here, they should know about it, and there should be some changes. "Got it. You may leave." Ren Baqin waved his hand and pondered for a long time after he left. If the winged cavalry were to directly crush them, the other party might be unaware of something and might suffer some casualties. Now that the winged cavalry had suffered casualties, not to mention the Empress, even he felt distressed. Furthermore, it was known that there were more than 200,000 rebel soldiers in the south. At present, there were only 6,000 aboriginal soldiers here, including 800 winged cavalry warriors. Even if the other party were all Huskies, 200,000 Huskies wouldn't be easy to deal with. Ren Baqin thought about it and called Sui Ching and Qing Yun soared over. "Sirs, the Wang estuary and Mount Dulong are currently guarded by the experts sent by the rebel army. Those righteous and chivalrous people are trapped in the 3 rivers and may be wiped out by the rebel army at any time. I would like to ask the 2 of you to select some experts from the city to check out these 2 places and report back to me. This is an opportunity that I have painstakingly fought for the 2 of you. According to Her Majesty's instructions, the army will directly crush them to pieces. However, in that case, there will be nothing for you to do. I thought that since you were the first to pledge allegiance to Her Majesty, you will naturally be treated better than others in the future. However, if you don't have any meritorious service, it will be easy for others to gossip about you. As such, I have fought for the task of gathering information for all of you in the city," Ren Baqin said. "I have really put a lot of thought into this." Chapter 499. Let's go. Zhang Chongkong waved his hand at Painting Fairy, Zhang Kaixian, and the others in the courtyard. At this moment, he was carrying a 9-ringed broadsword on his back. The 4 people beside him were the outer sanctum deacon Ling Siquan, the inner sanctum deacon Su Ming, the deputy steward Lu Jing, and the vault steward Zhang Qiyang. They were also carrying similar weapons. "Master, why don't I go with you?" Painting Fairy asked. "Stay behind and take care of Kaixian. This trip is just to investigate, and there won't be much danger. Kaixian, I'll bring back some meat for you." Zhang Chongkong waved his hand. After saying this, Zhang Chongkong felt somewhat miserable. He actually had to bring back some meat for his daughter on the way back. He was the chief of the Golden Ring residence after all, yet he had been reduced to such a state. However, even the winged cavalry warriors had to eat rice stubble 6 times a day. Naturally, they wouldn't have any good meals. It was already good enough that they could eat their fill. Rice stubble was a common food in Tianjing Basin. It was somewhat similar to millet on Earth. It wasn't delicious, but it was abundant. "Don't worry, madam. We will definitely send the chief back safe and sound." Ling Siquan and the others raised their thumbs, index fingers, and pinkies. This gesture represented a promise. Thank you for your hard work. Painting Fairy bowed in return. Let's go. The 5 of them mounted their mounts and traveled along the long street to the south of the city. When they arrived at the city gate, they threw a sign over for the soldiers to check. After leaving the city and traveling 3 kilometers south, they saw more than 20 people standing or sitting in groups of 2 or 3. Greetings, everyone. I'm late. Zhang Chongkong scanned the crowd and saw people from the Lingshan sect, the Nine Blades sect, the Shaoshan sect, the General sect, and a few other small sections. Other than the Lingshan sect and the Golden Ring residents, the rest were small sects that usually only had 1 or 2 earth will experts. If this was in the past, the status of both parties would naturally be different. However, now, other than the Lingshan sect, which had clung onto Renbaqian's thigh, there was no difference between the other sections. As Zhang Chongkong and the others arrived, everyone got up from the ground. It seemed like the 5 of them were the last ones. Everyone is here. Let's set off. Su Xing, the chief of the Lingshan sect, who was dressed in embroidered clothes, announced the arrival of everyone. Is Seniors Wen not coming? Someone asked. With a spirit will expert in charge, even if there was an ambush at the mouth of the Wang estuary, everyone wouldn't be worried. Uncle Master Swo will also go, but he will not show himself. The investigation will mainly depend on everyone here. When everyone arrives, please be careful. Do not be careless, Su Xing warned the crowd. It is said that there are more than a dozen earth will experts there, and their skills aren't inferior to those of us here. That was news from a few days ago, and there might be other experts around now. In addition, there are about 5,000 soldiers on the mountain. If they surround you, it will be difficult for anyone below the spirit will level to escape. This time, we're mainly here to investigate. If there's no need, don't fight with anyone. Evacuate immediately if anything happens. Sect Master Su, don't worry. We're not reckless people. Everyone said. In fact, none of them wanted to fight. It wasn't that he was afraid of the battle, but that they had been sitting at the same table, discussing how to kill Qi Zixiao. But now, they had sided with the imperial court. When facing the other party, he always felt that he was in the wrong. When everyone headed to the Wang estuary, Renbaqian was writing and drawing on a piece of paper. What are you writing? The Empress looked over and saw that it was written in simplified Chinese, with the words, embroidered uniform guards, written at the top. I feel that it's a pity not to make use of these people. In the past, the imperial court didn't know much about anything outside of Dayo because the aboriginals were more suited for killing enemies on the battlefield and were good at infiltrating and investigating. Furthermore, the aboriginals were too easy to recognize. Even a blind person could tell that they were from Dayo based on their figures and expressions. Now that we have these people, we can cast our net and at least have some understanding of the movements of other countries. We can also make use of these people to control Tianjing Basin and the Yun Nation Province, Renbaqian explained. The Yun Nation Province? Or the Protectorate of the East Cloud? When the Yun Nation is conquered, Your Majesty can call it whatever you want, Renbaqian said. As for the Yun Nation, it was still the Yun Nation now, but it wouldn't be in the future. Neither he nor the Empress doubted whether Dayo could conquer the Yun Nation or not. Decades ago, if it wasn't for the fact that the former emperor didn't want to occupy the Yun Nation and only wanted to seize it, the Yun Nation would have been destroyed. Why are they called the embroidered uniform guards? The Empress asked curiously. In fact, their duties overlap with those of the Department of Inspection. However, this team is made up of martial arts experts who have surrendered and is different from the departments of the imperial court. Therefore, they have been given another name. At present, it's just a concept. If your majesty doesn't like it, you can call them the East Faction Guards, the West Faction Guards, or the Department of Security, Renbochin explained simply. Embroidered uniform guards, this name isn't bad. The Empress nodded slightly and asked, do you think these people are trustworthy? Even though Renbochin had already recruited these people and allowed them to participate in some matters, the Empress still didn't like them. Renbochin was clear about this. Even the Empress was like this, let alone the others. However, this was normal. After all, decades of attitudes and likes and dislikes couldn't be changed in a few days or months. There was still a long way to go before these people could truly live under the same sky as the Aboriginals. It's an attempt. As for whether they are trustworthy or not, we can only find out after we use them. I'm a little bored and want to go to Earth to relieve my boredom. This was the first time the Empress took the initiative to go to Earth. Outside of Tianjing Basin, she could still use the radio station to listen to news from other directions. Here, other than the daily letters from Goose City, there was nothing else to do. It had been more than a month, and her patience was wearing thin. That's good. I reckon that those people will take at least one more day to return, Renbochin said. Your Majesty, do you want to meet that Su Wen? The Empress's eyes lit up when she heard Renbochin's words. She was very interested in this person. One had to know that his peaches were delivered after the Empress was injured, and the spirit Spiritingu had also arrived. Without these two peaches, with 30% of the Empress's strength and the help of the other martial arts experts, they would at most be able to drive Tinyu away. Both of them returned to Earth and went to their respective rooms to change their clothes. Renbochin, who had just changed his underwear, moved his ears and seemed to have heard something. Ah! Help! The sound is coming from outside the house. And it's getting closer and closer. Renbochin thought as he put on his clothes and went to the window. However, before he could see the other party, he heard the sound of glass shattering next door and a dull thud. Oh no! Renbochin quivered. The room next door was the Empress's. Renbochin pulled up his pants and hurriedly ran to the room next door. He kicked open the door and saw a palm getting bigger and bigger. Then, it slapped his face. Thud. Renbochin's entire body was hanging from the wall. Chapter 500. The Empress slapped Renbochin to the wall. Then, she shyly put down her arms that were covering her chest and changed her clothes. Inside the room, the area near the window was a mess. A strange-looking thing was thrown onto the bed, but only half of it was left. The other half was kicked into pieces by the Empress the moment it crashed into the room. What was left behind was half of the strange-looking thing and a tightly wrapped girl who was about 16 or 17 years old. She was bleeding profusely from her body and was lying on the bed. If she didn't know that it was impossible to meet an assassin in this world, she would have been dead by now. Even so, the broken pieces of the Empress's kick left many wounds on the girl's body. Miss? Miss? At this moment, an anxious voice came from outside the window. The Empress raised her eyebrows, kicked the girl, and immediately flew out of the window. A few people who were rushing over from afar watched helplessly as the girl crashed through the window, flew out, and fell on the lawn below. Bastard! The people below stared with their eyes wide open. Even though it was wrong for the young mistress to lose control of her flying motorcycle and crash into their house, it was extremely cruel to throw her down from the second floor. There weren't many villas in the vicinity, and they were worth tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. Those who could live here were all rich and powerful people. A few people ran over to check on the girl and saw that her body was full of injuries. Her arm was also twisted at an angle. It was broken when she was thrown down from the second floor. When they saw this kind of injury, their expressions changed drastically. One of them hurriedly made a phone call, another ran to get the car, and another stood below and scolded angrily. "Who are you? Get down here. Are you still human? How dare you throw the young mistress down from the second floor? You will regret it if you don't give any leeway." In the room, the Empress, who had just changed her clothes, frowned and looked unhappy. She crashed into the room while she was changing her clothes. She was already being magnanimous by sparing her life. Yet these people were still making noise below. If this was her world, her whole family would have been buried. To the Empress, sparing the other party's life was already the greatest kindness. A few people saw a young lady in red appear in front of the window and said coldly, "Get lost. Don't let me see you again." Upon hearing the Empress's words, a murderous aura surged from the young man's body. "Ignore her. Go back and tell Sir that there will be a time when she regrets it." The other person checked the girl's body and said after confirming that her life was not in danger. The young man swallowed his words and stared fiercely at the Empress on the second floor. The Empress was a little unhappy and couldn't be bothered with the people below. She turned around to check on Renbachian's injuries. Not long after, they heard the sound of a car entering the courtyard and driving away. During this time, they also heard words like, "Be gentle, don't touch the young lady's wound, be careful of the car door." The courtyard of this villa had no walls. Outside the villa was a large garden and lawn, and further out was a cement road. After a while, Renbachian woke up from his coma. His face and nose hurt, and there was a big bump on the back of his head. His entire body felt like it was falling apart. When Renbachian woke up, the first thing he saw was the mess in the opposite room. He was immediately shocked. "Your Majesty!" Renbachian hurriedly shouted. "What are you shouting for?" The Empress's cold voice came from beside him. Only then did Renbachian realize that the Empress was leaning against the wall and eating ice cream. "What happened?" Renbachian asked. His mind was spinning non-stop. Why did he encounter an attack when he just came back? Logically speaking, it was impossible for someone to attack him. Unless the matter between him and the nation was discovered by foreign countries. Did foreign powers send people to ambush him? This was the only possibility that Renbachian could think of. He was still in the honeymoon period with the nation. This time, he even brought back an arm, a leg, and some internal organs of Tingyu. It was impossible for the nation to do anything to him. He didn't expect that there would be a day when he would be targeted by enemy agents. But who was he? He was a manual expert. Most importantly, he had the Empress by his side. "You guys were courting death." "I don't know," the Empress said faintly. "Just now, someone wrote something and crashed into the room from the window." Damn it. Renbachian was immediately overflowing with murderous intent. Just now, the Empress was changing her clothes. He didn't see anything and was slapped to the wall. The other party actually attacked at that time and even crashed into the room. He had to die. Where is he? Renbachian gritted his teeth and was full of murderous intent. He's not dead. He was kicked out of the window, the Empress said faintly. Why isn't he dead? Renbachian was shocked. You said that you should try not to kill anyone here. There are only ants here, and I'm not interested, the Empress said faintly. Just now, there were people downstairs who said that they would make me regret it. I want to see how they will make me regret it. Ah, they are simply courting death. If they dare to appear again, I will make them regret living in this world. Renbachian was full of murderous intent. Not only did they dare to attack the Empress, but they also dared to say such ruthless words. Ha! Ruthless words. If it was an attack by enemy agents, they wouldn't be so retarded, right? Renbachian rubbed his face, nose, and the back of his head. He stood up from the ground and went into the room to take a look. He discovered that there were still some objects left behind by the other party. What's this? Renbachien looked at it for a long time. Half of the object was destroyed. The front half was gone, and only the back half, a seat, and a round plate were left. He couldn't see anything. He carefully thought about what happened. The Empress was changing clothes in the room, and the other party came in through the window. Damn it! It wouldn't be an exaggeration to tear them into pieces. Renbachien gritted his teeth for a long time. However, he thought that he was on the second floor now, and the other party came in through the air. This thing still had a seat and a round plate. Was it a flying motorcycle? Your Majesty, who came in? Renbachien asked. It should be a woman who isn't even 20 years old, the Empress said faintly. A woman who isn't even 20 years old. Renbachien started to feel that something was wrong. What are the people outside like? What did they say? Even though the Empress was a little impatient, she still roughly explained it to him. Renbachien was speechless. He finally understood that this wasn't an attack, but a traffic accident. However, this traffic accident came directly to the second floor of his house, and the Empress happened to be changing clothes. Just now, the Empress actually kicked an unconscious girl out of the second floor. Renbachien thought about it. The Empress was always right, and there was no other possibility. If there was, then according to the previous rule, the Empress was always right. Knowing that the other party wasn't an enemy agent, Renbachien didn't know if he was relieved or disappointed. Ever since he reached the manual level, he didn't even have a chance to show his face. As for the other party's revenge, he could just leave it to the Messier 87 department. Even though there were rich people in this area, who could be more powerful than the government? Renbachien put this matter aside and recalled the scene he saw before he passed out. Even though the Empress had used her arm to block it, it seemed like a little bit was exposed. He seemed to have seen a smear of pink, but he wasn't sure if it was an illusion. Renbachien pondered and recalled that he couldn't miss such an important scene just because he was unconscious. What disrespectful thoughts are you having? The Empress asked coldly. How is that possible? Renbachien laughed. I'll give the Messier 87 department a call. Renbachien walked back to his room, leaned against the wall, and continued to recall. Did he see it or not? At that time, the Empress was wearing a pair of black lace panties. Renbachien bought her underwear. She only had panties, and then there were the skin-tight shorts from that world, which were similar to safety pants. The enchanting and elastic body of the Empress, who was wearing panties, was half blocked. Renbachien rubbed his nose. The weather had been dry recently, and he was a little hot. If you have any wild thoughts again, I'll beat you to death. The Empress's voice was transmitted to his ears through the wall. Renbachien laughed mischievously. The Empress couldn't beat him to death, but if she were to embarrass him, he was afraid that he would be beaten up. Speaking of which, his strength hadn't improved in other aspects, but his ability to withstand beatings had improved a lot. If it was before he entered the manual level, he would have been sent to the hospital again. Renbachien gave Yang Sen a call and told him about what had happened just now. Sir, can you stop stirring up trouble? Yang Sen said helplessly. I'll get someone to check first. You should be content that he's still alive. Renbachien grinned. Under those circumstances, the Empress was already very lucky that she didn't kill him. After hanging up the phone, Renbachien walked out of the room and saw the Empress standing in front of his messy window. The Empress raised her eyebrows and said, "They still have people watching. They really don't know what's good for them." She hadn't noticed before, but now realized that there were actually people hiding in the shade of a tree in the distance. Your Majesty, don't bother about them. As Renbachien spoke, he looked at the back of the Empress. His gaze moved from her fine black hair to her smooth shoulders, and then continued downwards, wherever Renbochen's gaze stopped, the Empress's skin would have small goosebumps, making her feel itchy. "Have you seen enough?" The Empress turned around and said angrily. "Your Majesty, do you want to dance?" Renbochen asked on a whim. He stepped forward, held the Empress's hand, and pulled her downstairs. The Empress allowed him to hold her hand and followed his footsteps. After a while, the classic canon was played in the living room. Renbochen put the Empress's hands on his shoulders and put his hands on her waist. The warmth of their bodies was transmitted through their thin clothes to their palms. "I really can't imagine how terrible it would be if I didn't meet your Majesty." Renbochen gently moved his feet and looked straight into the Empress's eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, he was stepped on by the Empress. "It's okay, it doesn't hurt." Renbochen ignored the pain in his toes and said with a face full of joy, "Fortunately, that kind of thing will never happen." The Empress looked at Renbochen's smile and felt her heart beating wildly. She exerted more strength in her fingers and slowed down her steps. Even after such a long time, she still felt a little flustered every time they had such intimate contact. At first, this uncontrollable emotion made her want to kill him, but now she began to enjoy this feeling. This feeling wasn't bad. He was stepped on again. "It's okay, it doesn't hurt," Renbochen said to himself as he moved his toes. The two of them felt each other's warmth in the music. Renbochen moved his face forward and gently kissed the Empress's lips, feeling the warmth that seeped into his heart. The Empress opened her eyes and looked straight at him. Her eyes were filled with tenderness. The tips of her ears and cheeks began to warm up. "Another kick, Renbochen. It doesn't hurt, it really doesn't hurt." Amidst the music, the two of them rotated gently. Renbochen whispered in the Empress's ear and moved his hands from the Empress's waist to her back. The edge of one palm felt amazing elasticity while the other wrapped around the Empress's back and squeezed the two of them together. His chest also felt a touch of elasticity. The Empress's hands were unknowingly wrapped around Renbochen's neck. Her face was full of embarrassment. Chapter 501. Renbochen was lying on the edge of the swimming pool, drinking iced fruit juice while scratching his feet, or rather, rubbing his toes. 3 of his toes were visibly swollen like 3 carrots, but they were a little short. Renbochen was looking forward to it. Just now, he took advantage of the passionate atmosphere to persuade the Empress to change into the swimsuit that he had prepared for her. He was looking forward to seeing the Empress's figure in a swimsuit. As the saying goes, unobtainable is the best, and unobtainable is the most tempting. It's like a cat scratching, itchy. Especially for a person like the Empress. She was usually ice cold, but today, her eyes were filled with affection. Furthermore, she had changed into her swimsuit to show off her figure. Renbochen felt that it was enough to make him happy. Strength and power were the best packaging for a man. Sometimes, it was the same for a woman. For women like the Empress and Li Yuanzhu, even if they weren't exceptionally beautiful and only had ordinary looks, it was enough to make people's hearts flutter. If she had a peerless elegance, then not many men would be able to resist such a temptation. If there was such a man, he would either be gay or a eunuch. Renbochen rubbed his toes. When he heard the door open, he immediately turned his head. First, a pair of beautiful legs appeared in front of Renbochen. In his mind, the Empress in a bikini appeared, and his heart began to beat faster. The weather was dry, and he had to be careful of internal heat. He drank a mouthful of fruit juice to calm himself down. However, Renbochen's eyes widened very quickly when he saw the Empress walking in with a white bath towel wrapped around her. The white bath towel was just below her buttocks, revealing her fair legs, smooth shoulders, and alluring collarbones. The weather was dry, he would definitely be on fire. Slurp, slurp. Renbochen drank half a glass of fruit juice in one breath and felt a little cooler. The Empress glanced at Rinpochen, walked to his side, and sat down. Your Majesty, aren't you going to test the water? Rinpochen passed another glass of fruit juice to her. Not interested, the Empress replied faintly. Her face had regained its previous coldness, but her voice was much gentler. That layer of coldness was like a layer of shell. Two people in an indoor swimming pool, not swimming and not being able to bask in the sun, seems a little silly, Rinpochen said after some thought. Then, he felt himself flying, dancing in the air, and plunging into the water with a splash. That way, he wouldn't look so stupid. The Empress smirked. The moment Rinpochen entered the water, he felt his strength, balance, and calmness disappear. The fear of being surrounded by water resurfaced in his heart. After tossing and turning in the water for a long time, it finally stood up and spat out a stream of water. If he were to drown in a 1-4-meter pool, that would be too depressing. Rinpochen leaned against the side of the pool and raised his head to look at the Empress. From this angle, it was a pity that the Empress was crossing her legs and couldn't see anything. Rinpochen rolled his eyes, raised his hand, and a handful of water flew toward the Empress. Then, the water flew back and forth and hit Rinpochen's face. Seeing that the layer of ice on the Empress's face had melted, the smile on her face widened. Your Majesty, come down and give it a try. Soaking in the water for a while in this weather is simply too comfortable. Rinpochen said with a comfortable look on his face. When the Empress heard what Rinpochen said, her heart was moved. She got up from the reclining chair, leaped, and landed in the middle of the pool. She stretched out her hand and slapped it downwards. He swore that he saw a tsunami. It was as if there was a tsunami in the entire pool. All the water in the pool soared into the sky and hit the surrounding walls and ceiling. Countless water droplets splashed in all directions, and Rinpochen couldn't even open his eyes. He could hear the sound of water crashing against the walls. When Rinpochen opened his eyes, he was dumbstruck to see that the water in the pool had decreased by half. The Empress was wrapped in a bath towel, sitting in the pool and leaning against the wall. Soaking in the bath. He turned his head and looked around, only to see water everywhere outside the pool. The reclining chair was gone. The juice was gone. The table was gone. The speaker in the corner was probably damaged as well, Your Majesty. Rinpochen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The Empress had a teasing look on her face. I know what you are thinking, but I won't let you see it. However, Rinpochen could finally dog paddle in the half-filled pool. If he could still drown in this, he might as well drown. It was too embarrassing. He dog paddled all the way to the Empress's side. As the water outside the pool fell back into the pool, the water level in the pool rose, and Rinpochen had no choice but to stand up. However, the Empress actually maintained her previous sitting posture and floated in the water. If one looked closely, they would see that the Empress's fingers were constantly tapping downwards, which was why she was able to float in the water. Your Majesty, you can't swim. Rinpochen suddenly thought of a problem. Previously, he had seen the Empress jump from a cliff that was 100 meters high into the water before coming back up. As such, he had never thought that she couldn't swim. However, at this moment, he suddenly felt that this possibility was quite high. The Empress rolled her eyes at him and waved her hand in the water. Rinpochen felt that he saw a tsunami again, washing him from one end of the pool to the other. Well, I can't afford to offend you even if I can't swim. The two of them stayed in the pool for more than an hour before coming out. The Empress walked out with water dripping from her body. When she reached the door, the bath towel on her body fell off. Rinpochen widened his eyes as he looked at the Empress's bare back and the outline of her bikini. Then, a door blocked the Empress's figure. Is this a benefit? Rinpochen's heart was beating rapidly. I'm having so much fun here that I don't miss home. Sue Wan and the like, to hell with it. It seemed like Her Majesty was in a good mood this time around. Let's play for 2 more days. In a spacious office, an old man with white hair and beard sat on the sofa. Boss, I've found it. A young man wearing glasses walked to the old man's side and placed a stack of papers beside him. The owner's name is Renbotian, and the lady's name is Qi Zixiao. Renbotian's parents are ordinary people who graduated from SY University. 3 years ago, he was very ordinary and was just an ordinary employee of a small company. Later on, he cooperated with a businessman with the surname Chen in S City. That 1,000 Gold Medical was established by them. Another thing to note is that he was once wanted together with Qi Zixiao. The reason for being wanted was because he killed a businessman with the surname Jean and his family of more than 10 people. After that, he and Qi Zixiao escaped from the country. Later on, it was unknown how they came back, but the wanted order was revoked. Combined with the phone call that you received previously, he must have hooked up with someone in the country. However, we haven't found out who this backer is. But from this point of view, the other party is a vicious and merciless person. Even though that businessman with the surname Jean had a background in the underworld, he was considered extremely daring in the current situation in the country. As for that Qi Zixiao, there's very little information. Other than the fact that he was once wanted, there's no other information. As the old man looked at the information in his hands and listened to the young man's narration, a cold glint flashed in his eyes. His granddaughter had already fainted after crashing into their house, and they actually threw her down from the 2nd floor. This was a huge feud. If he didn't take revenge, others would think that he was weak and easy to bully. Even though he didn't know how the other party got a ministerial official to call him, the other party didn't even show his face. Did they think that this would make him forget about this matter? So what if he had a backer? At his position, he didn't need to care so much anymore. Chapter 502. Boss, do you really want to do this? The young man wearing glasses bowed in front of the old man and asked. Go and arrange it. In business, we will naturally use business methods. Outside of business, we will use other methods. The old man said. Since the other party is vicious and merciless, we can't give him the chance to retaliate. Yes. I need an accident. Understood. The old man nodded slightly. Since the other party was vicious and merciless, then he couldn't blame him for being vicious. To be able to reach this position, who would be as clean as a white lotus? It was just that no matter what they did, they still played within the rules. However, there was no need for rules at this point. What? Is there a problem? When Renbotian returned to his room, he saw 5 or 6 missed calls from Yang Sen on his cell phone. He wondered if there were any twists and turns. It's fine if you don't make a move, but once you do, it'll be troublesome. Yang Sen sighed on the other end of the phone. Does he have a powerful background? Renbotian thought about it. Was there anyone with a more powerful background than him? Renbotian was now the ambassador connecting the 2 worlds and a man-will expert. He had a large group of earth-will experts under him. His background is not small. The other party's identity is not simple. The most important thing is the item in his hands. Yang Sen then told the other party's identity. Wang Ji. The top 100 richest people on the list. Renbotian was surprised. He had never heard of this name before. Although the other party's fame was not as eye-catching as internet giants like Uncle Ma and Uncle Ma, in fact, their influence was not low. Not only did he own the largest oil company in the country, but he also owned several oil and gas projects in the country. More importantly, he had something very important in his hands. 40% interest in a rock page company in America. A large oil field had just been discovered under the company's land, which was worth $900 billion according to the market price. Even if the entire oil field didn't belong to this company, they could still get a share of the profits. Although the news had not been announced, in this era where energy was the #1 resource, holding such a card in his hand was indeed not low. Not to mention the #1 privately run oil company, which could also explain some things. Therefore, even though Yang Sen had already called the other party through someone else, it was hard to say how effective it would be. In particular, Ren Baqin didn't say or do anything. He couldn't possibly tell him how important his identity was, could he? He could only talk about it from the side. "Oh, got it," Ren Baqin replied indifferently. "If you can apologize." Yang Sen said hesitantly. If Ren Baqin apologized and expressed his sincerity, this matter could be resolved. "This is my house. If he barged into my house, do I have to treat him like a lord?" Ren Baqin sneered. "It's just a little girl, and the flying motorcycle has malfunctioned," Yang Sen said. "Forget it." He firmly supported all of the Empress's actions. Everything that the Empress did was right. They are the ones who should be apologizing. They should really go and offer incense to thank Buddha for his protection. Yang Sen was frowning on the other end of the phone. That Wang Ji's identity was indeed not ordinary, but these two were not to be trifled with. To be honest, the Blessed Enclave was much more important than an oil field in the United States, or rather, the two could not be compared at all. At present, whether it was the secret manual, the long and short saber, the pair of swords made of unknown materials, or other things that the other party had taken out, they could all be said to be priceless treasures. The things contained in them were extremely valuable, whether it was the ability to control weapons with consciousness or new materials. Besides, there was no other possibility of obtaining these things from him. "I will think of another way. Don't get into conflict with the other party and inform me if anything happens." Yang Sen thought that he had to communicate with the higher-ups. If that person appeared, he would definitely be able to suppress Wang Ji. "As long as he doesn't provoke me, can't I drive the flying motorcycle and crash into his house?" Ren Baqin grinned and hung up the phone. To be honest, he was really unlucky to encounter such a thing as soon as he came back. By the time Ren Baqin hung up the phone, the Empress had already changed into a red dress. "Go out for a meal. Then go to the bund to see the scenery?" Ren Baqin asked. "Yes, I want to watch a movie," the Empress said. From her voice, one could tell that she was very interested. After coming to this world so many times, she had never gone to the cinema to watch a movie. She always saw such scenes on television, which made her curious. "That's good." Ren Baqin felt that it wasn't a bad idea for the two of them to watch a movie and eat popcorn like an ordinary couple in the dark. After eating, Ren Baqin did some research and found that there was an interesting horror movie being screened. X-Men, New Mutants. Ren Baqin was also interested in making an X-Men movie into a horror movie. Ren Baqin and the Empress ate enough food for about 30 people. The Empress's chopsticks moved like a fan and couldn't be seen clearly. Ren Baqin could only see a series of afterimages. Although they were in a private room and didn't scare the other guests, the waiter was frightened. Ren Baqin had to admit that after his body became stronger, everything else was fine. However, his appetite was destined to make it impossible for him to eat in the restaurant's lobby. There weren't many people in the cinema. Ren Baqin and the Empress each carried a big bucket of popcorn and drinks into the cinema hall. "What are these?" the Empress asked as she looked at the glasses in her hand. "Put them on and see. You will know the specific effect in a while." Ren Baqin demonstrated how to put on the 3D glasses. Ren Baqin felt at ease when he smelled the fragrance from the Empress's body. He reached out and grabbed one of her hands. The two of them quietly waited for the movie to start. The movie had just started, and the leaves that floated out of the screen surprised the Empress. It looks like it's in the air. The Empress stretched out her finger as if she wanted to touch it. It's a type of technology that uses the visual difference between the two eyes to produce a visual effect. It's like looking at a real object. Renbochin briefly introduced what he knew. Very interesting. The Empress was very interested in this. As the movie progressed, the plot of the movie began to attract the Empress's attention. The two of them didn't say anything else and quietly watched the movie while feeling the warmth from their hands that were holding each other's hands. The atmosphere of the movie was a little strange and was indeed filled with the atmosphere of a horror movie. Renbochin was really afraid that the Empress would be frightened by the sudden scenes in the movie and have an extreme reaction. Fortunately, this situation didn't happen. It wasn't until a character approached a rolling washing machine that a palm and flames suddenly shot out from inside. The Empress subconsciously flicked her finger at the moment the palm came over, rip. Along with a slight sound, a big hole appeared in the position of the palm on the screen, Your Majesty. Renbochin didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he held the Empress's hand. There was a big hole in the screen, so the movie naturally couldn't be watched anymore. Even though the theater immediately arranged for other theaters, the two of them weren't interested. Let's go back. The Empress was a little disappointed, but she couldn't say anything since she had ruined the movie. The two of them drove all the way back. When they passed a junction, an ear-piercing sound of tires could be heard. They saw a construction truck directly colliding with Renbochin's car. F***CK. Renbochin cursed. He stepped on the accelerator and felt the car shake violently. Then, the sky spun and the whole car was sent flying. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.